Okay, thank you. I'd like to call the Budget and Public Employees Committee hearing order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Odenberg. Alderwoman Velazquez.
Present.
Alderwoman Sanye. Alderman Aldrich. Chair Spencer.
Present.
Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Odenberg. Alderwoman Sanye. Alderman Aldrich. We have 2 present.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. It's my understanding we have 2 members of the committee on Zoom. Could we check to see if they're present?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Alderwoman Boyd, we're now taking up the roll.
Present.
Thank you. Alderman Odenberg. Alderwoman Sanye. We have 4 present. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. With that, today on our agenda, we just have one item, the continuation of Board Bill Number 1, our city's budget as by the Board of E&A to the Board. Today, we have on our calendar the Public Safety Department, our Corrections Department within the Public Safety Department. Our Director for Public Safety is unable to join us today. We were notified of this last night. And later today at 10:30, we'll be hearing from St. Louis SLMPD. With that, I'd like to invite the Public Safety Corrections Department up to the podium. And I'll just remind everybody that we speak in the microphone. To speak in the microphone for those not present, introduce yourself, any staff you have, and we will start with the presentation and then move on to questions. Good morning.
Do you have a number from people in Hillsdale?
I'm sorry.
Let me look it up, Roz.
We'll have to put your mic on. And and if you don't mind, we're gonna we'll take your budget presentation, but if you're going through as you go through, just let us know where in the budget books to look so that we can all be on the same page. Literally. Ooh, STL TV, it looks like we're having some issues with our mic.
Oh, there it goes.
Oh, good, okay.
I got it. I'm sorry, you wanted me to state my name for the record?
Yeah, just introduce yourself and any staff members, anybody else that you have here on behalf of Corrections.
Jennifer Clemens Abdullah, Commissioner of Corrections, and I did not bring any staff today. We don't have any oppositions to the proposed budget. You want me to go down line item?
Sure, if you could describe the budget in a general sense, I mean, kind of what we do here, generally speaking, kind of go through the budget changes and that sort of thing. So if we want to take a look more broadly speaking, your budget for this year, if I'm looking at page, the overview, let's see here. Can you remind me your fund number?
This is page 282, I think.
These are very large budget books. Okay.
If you look at the top, it's
Okay, so
633.
633. Okay, so 633, we've got a requested budget of 40,750,000 and a proposed budget of 28.9. Is that correct? Okay. Can you kind of walk us through? It looks like the $29 million budget is a $3 million reduction from fiscal year '24. Is that right? It's our
Yes.
understanding from a broad perspective, when the budget director was here discussing kind of this year's budget, one of the main things he pointed out was a pretty significant reduction in your staff numbers. Can you kind of go through how your proposed budget differs from your requested, your staffing, et cetera?
Overall, we were anticipating to fulfill our complement. However, due to the difficulties in obtaining people that are want to work in the environment, that has reduced our budget, and we're okay with that because we understand. And once we get up to our complement analysis, we'll ask for an increase.
Okay, maybe it would be helpful, I think a lot of, might be helpful to briefly, I know we've had you before us before, but if you could broadly describe the department, all the things you oversee, the facilities you oversee, kind of broadly speaking, what corrections.
Corrections handles, we have a maintenance department, we have a inventory department. Besides, corrections is our biggest section of the budget. We have a food service and a healthcare. Our biggest part of that, of our overall budget is probably, besides salaries, is our healthcare budget. And we did get a slight increase in that, which is going to help us. We're like a city within a city. We have, commissary, food service, a lot of things that the normal folks would have. We have it pretty much in a jail setting. We operate on a daily
Damn,
basis.
the meeting has started,
24
but for some reason, we're trapped in like a no man's land.
Well, you're here with us, Alderman
Don't hear
Oldenburg.
nothing.
We can hear you.
I know, I'm
Oh, okay.
texting right now.
Mr. Oldenburg?
Looks,
It's from here.
okay, could somebody text Alderman Oldenburg? Okay.
Yeah, he should be able to control it. STL TV. Can you mute Mr. Oldenburg? Okay, he's unmuted. Alderman Oldenburg, can you hear us?
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
We can't hear anything.
We can hear you
We can
very
hear you
well,
very
but you
well,
can't hear
but you
us.
can't hear us.
One
Me
moment.
and, me and
Unmute
Tom,
the
we
room.
can hear.
One moment.
One moment.
Okay.
Can't hear or see.
She said they can hear us.
We'll take a quick pause here.
We can't see.
You are in the meeting now.
Can you see us?
Do what?
Can you, s-
Tom, they said they can hear us, but now, okay, now we see them. But we can't hear.
Well, we look good.
I already did.
I do. Yeah. Is your town hall, is it tonight? It was yesterday. Not mine.
Can you hear us now?
I didn't have one.
I can hear, we can hear bits and pieces.
Yep.
Can't hear the person speaking. Whoever speaks, we can't hear.
What about now?
Nope.
Well, we can hear you, yeah, but
Yeah, we can hear you, Aura, but not the speaker.
Can you hear us now? We're not speaking.
No one.
Nobody's speaking but Carol.
That's
Right now, yes.
Okay, all right.
Once we get this, once we get the AV going, we'll reconvene the hearing.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
I'm going to speak into Mike. Speak 15. Can you hear me now, Ms. Boyd?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
We,
Sure. Okay. Thank
You can
you.
also take it off the
Oh, take
stand
the mic off.
if it's better for you. Yeah, you don't have to, because the stands are kind of weird. So.
Okay. We ready?
we are ready. Okay, so we'll reconvene the hearing. Okay, so thank you, Director. Broadly speaking, if you could kind of give an overview of the Corrections Department, what you oversee, the kind of functions of the Corrections Department from a broad perspective.
From a broad perspective, the City Justice Center is a city within a city. We have a food service, health service, caseworkers, inventory, maintenance department, and the bulk of our salaries come from correctional staff. We just have a little bit of everything in the Division of Corrections in order to maintain and operate in a way to cater to various different things, whether it be somebody getting released, getting admitted into the Justice Center. We try to make sure we have everything in place to operate like a normal correctional facility. So with that, I was talking about the decrease that we had in correctional staff salaries. Our complement has not changed. However, the recruitment efforts are there. There's just not a lot of people to fill the positions. So our budget went down in salaries. And once we get up to our complement analysis, we will ask for an increase back.
Once you get back up, so can you help us understand what to function optimally? Right now, or I guess I'm looking at last year's staffing. As you know, we oversee budget, but we also oversee public employees. So we've been running semi-regular reports on the staffing across city departments. Our last report was in February of this year. We had 330 authorized positions in the 633 City Justice Fund, of which 182 were vacant, looking at a vacancy rate of about 55%. Those 330 authorized employees from last year, is this what you would need to function optimally? Or in other words, I know you weren't able to fill those positions and we had a high vacancy rate, but if we're cutting them simply because we can't fill them, that's going to put us in a very difficult position to fill them, and we need to understand what you need to actually function optimally. So if you could kind of help us understand from I mean, I understand that they're vacant, but that doesn't necessarily reflect a need to cut them.
Right. Well, recruitment efforts have been, we are offering a $35 recruitment incentive. We've increased the rate of a CO1 to when their initial entry into CJC. That has not netted the amount of COs that we want, correctional officers that we want, that we desire. So since we're not at full capacity, we understand that it's okay to kind of run where we're not at full rate as far as correctional staff, correctional officers go. Once we do become full capacity, we will need the particular funding we'll request it back.
So if we're looking at, we're looking at a requested budget of 40 and a proposed budget of 29. The vast majority of that cut, it sounds like, is coming out of the staffing positions, is that correct?
Looks like it, yes.
Okay, so looking at your staffing personnel schedule on page 285, we have most of the requested staff persons, I'm going through the list here, inventory control, locksmith, et cetera, going all the way down, the majority of which look to be filled. But when I get down to 510, 100, 2331, excuse me, the correction officer, we had a requested total of 198 and a proposed total of 133. That's a $3 million savings for your budget. Is that that's the big cut? Is that what?
Yes.
Okay. How many correctional officers do you need to function optimally?
About 189.
180?
189 is what we've been, that's been our complement for the last 5 or so years, maybe more than that.
That's been your, excuse me, what?
The complement, the required to run if we're fully, if we're at full capacity, that's what it would take to run the full facility in an optimal way.
Are you at full capacity?
No,
What percentage capacity are you at?
probably about 45–50%.
We're at 45–50% capacity of the CJC?
Yes.
And are you still overseeing the workhouse, for my brain not remembering the technical term?
I am, however, it's not it's not going to be utilized for a jail. We're just waiting on the actual repurposing of, so.
But is that facility in your budget?
No, it is not.
So for the purpose of this budget, we're just looking at the CJC and the function of the CJC, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and the CJC is at 45–50% capacity?
I said 45–50. I'm thinking about it. It's probably 55%, yes. We have a capacity of about 1,000, and we have about 650.
Capacity of 1,000,
Yes,
and then currently you have 650.
yes.
So you're at like 65% capacity?
Yes.
Okay. As I kind of go through this, I'll turn it over. You don't have anything further from a presentation perspective?
No,
Okay, so that accounts for the $3 million difference, but there's still another $7 million in the versus the requested budget. Are there other line items that were not funded that that we can kind of go through from a broad perspective?
no, everything is, we were anticipating a larger population, and we didn't have it over the last year, and that is where the decrease came in food service, contractual services.
Okay. What is typically if you're looking at a capacity or of 650, what was last year's capacity rate, or what's driving the reduction or the less than anticipated number of folks you're serving?
I don't know what is driving it, but I know we've been hovering around 650 for the last 30 months.
30 months?
I think COVID had a big had a big impact on who we housed, and a lot of things have been looked at, I guess, when they do an arrest and when they're issued up on, instead of if it's a minor crime. I'm thinking, this is just me looking at things on a broad perspective. They've been giving bonds, therefore we don't have the capacity we would normally have. Because with the MSI and us, we probably had about 2,000 people housed in CJC and Annex. Since I came aboard, it's been about 650. Actually, it was probably at 470 for a minute, and then we kind of hover between those two numbers. We've never really been over 700.
I think that was when we ended the relationship with the federal government housing the federal detainees, is that correct? That was a massive shift in,
I'm not sure because I wasn't here.
Alderwoman Boyd, we can hear you. I don't know if that's purposeful. There's been, the facility has been in the news quite a bit over the last couple of years because of safety concerns. We've had some deaths in the facility. Can you talk a little bit about that and what is driving that, what you might need to, within your budget to prevent those horrible situations from happening?
Well, what we have did is increase the healthcare. We got a different healthcare provider, and we increased our healthcare services amount slightly. And what the assistance the Department of Health is providing us is helping us overall, making sure that we're looking at who's coming in, why they're coming in, and kind of catering to their health situation. And I think that's kind of minimized how things have turned out. It's actually more of Department of Health collectively that have helped us get to this point and be where we can kind of say, hey, give people the actual health care. So with that in mind, and the positions, the 12 positions that are allocated to provide the oversight, we also have some additional oversight to help with health care. And I think that in the end will probably net us to be able to filter people, get them the help they need in the various areas.
Okay, and what we're looking at there, I'm looking at the health and safety services line item. That is a was a $500,000 allocation. That has increased to $625,000. The prisoner medical services, last year's budget at $8.8 million, staying steady at $8.8 million. Are those the items, the line items you're describing, that increase in medical services of about $125,000?
Yes.
Okay, and we have a new provider of those services, is that right?
Yes.
If I look down the next line item, the food services is going from a budget of 3 million to 2.3. But I see that was a pretty significant increase over the 23 budget. So are you comfortable with that figure?
Yes.
Okay.
It's population driven, so we haven't had the population we anticipated, which is good. So the decrease is good.
So the safety and well-being of the prisoners has been directly related to the health and safety services provided. My concern would be the correctional officers and the staffing level, being able to, for example, accommodate medical needs, transportation within the facility from one part of the facility to a medical facility. It's my understanding that correctional officers are required for that internal transportation, and without staffing in those positions, that becomes an inaccessible option.
Yes.
Is that the case?
Yes. We're working on it. We manage our staff in a way to kind of try to balance the vacancies. However, we've come up with hiring incentives, increase in pay for a correctional officer, and that's getting us some people. So we're just in the process of, since the hiring freeze, we're waiting to get a list right now. So hopefully we can hire up. We're always interviewing and constantly trying to recruit. We have social media, various aspects of trying to get the word out that we're hiring.
Can you describe the other part? Can you repeat what you're saying about the hiring freeze? How did that impact your ability to hire folks?
Well, it really didn't. We was just waiting on actually the Taleo system to convert over so we can get some hiring, the names on the requisition to hire. So I guess it wasn't really the hiring freeze per se because we're essential. It's more so transferring from one system to another with Department of Personnel.
Okay. I'll turn it over to committee for questions. I just kind of want to get a broad sense of the department and some of the broad strokes before kind of going into some of the details. In order of seniority, I'll start with my vice chair, Alderwoman Boyd.
Thank you, Superintendent, for coming. I guess the chair pretty much asked a lot of our questions today, but I guess my concern is back to the safety of the inmates that are in the justice system and justice center. And I guess my question, how long are they locked up before they're able to walk around or go to another area or?
We're rotating, we do a modified movement, and we try to make sure everybody is, once we do so many cells at a time, they go back in and let the next set come out. Safety is first and foremost, let me say that. When we're dealing with people that are from the same city, oftentimes you have gangs, you have people that don't like certain people, and we want to make sure that if we're not aware of those enemies, that when we move those, allow them to come out for rec, we allow them to come out to rec safely. And if we let everybody out all at one time, that creates a chaotic situation. So therefore, we have them coming out in sections, and we rotate it all throughout the day until we get back to the same set and we start it back over.
Okay, I guess maybe I wasn't clear. So it was my understanding, and the big issue was, and as you said, it was before your time, when they had the workhouse, people said it was inhumane and people shouldn't be there. And my argument was the Justice Center would have people locked up for 23 hours, but let them out for an hour, but they had to have a guard escort. So that's what I'm asking. Are they locked up for so many hours, 8 hours, 12 hours, and then let out or and walk around with a guard? And I understand with the gangs and the different behaviors, but I'm just trying to figure out how long are they locked up in that cell before they are let out to walk around to kind of relieve some of that and depress some of that stress that they're dealing with.
Well, I think when you look at reentry, let's go back to coming into a facility. We have to establish some type of regulation. And when I say establish some type of regulation, we have to have where you are in your cell from 10, well, I think it's 11 o'clock now. We moved it to 11 till 7 in the morning. That is a way to help people get acclimated to what regular folks do in a regular environment as far as getting up, going to work. It's a part of reentry. That's what, and then after that, we start the recreation. I say that because, and I'm describing it like that because when you come in into a pod, you begin and you start recreation at 7, and you start with 6 cells. And you say, well, how many hours? Well, it's going to be dependent on, one, how they act. And when we do the 6 cells at a time, that's usually 12 people. Once they come out for an hour and a half, then the next cell goes back, they go in, and then the next goes, and then they rotate it until they get to the end, and then they come back and they start back up. So it's not a 23-hour lockdown. What it is a modified movement in order to ensure everybody can come out, use the telephone at various times. And then when they, sometimes on occasion, on various occasions, they come out and they create a ruckus. When I say create a ruckus, they may fight one another, do some things, so that hinders the rotation. But we're trying to say, okay, let's take care of that and go back to the rotation. I think that at the end of the day, we have to put their safety first and foremost. And I say their safety because you don't know, if we let too many people out at one time, somebody doesn't like someone and we get an issue, and then I'm coming before you giving an explanation for it.
Okay, and so the other thing I wanted to ask was in regards to the, I know that as the chair has said earlier about the riots and I want to say the last riot, and if I'm incorrect, please don't hesitate to correct me. It was more so about the food than the treatment there's itself. And so I see that you said that if the food costs have went down because of the reduction of inmates, but had the quality of meals stayed the same or improved because residents were not happy with what they were being given?
When I first arrived here, I didn't care for the food. I didn't like the way it looked. I didn't like the way it tasted. So I did get a bunch of complaints from the detainees. When I came in September 2021, that was the first thing that I tackled, only because it was the right thing to do. When we found out that what they were serving, it wasn't so much that they were serving chicken, it was what the chicken was made out of. So we began a process of meeting with that vendor and started made them make the change immediately. So we did have an increase in the food budget. So instead of getting partially separated chicken, we began to get chicken that was really like a chicken breast. And so that enhanced what our payment was regarding food service. And that went on, we probably met with them 6-8 months to taste the food, to meet with them to ensure, and I used some federal standards, like for beef, we needed an 80-20, stuff like that. That kind of increased what our food cost was. And then also we wanted to make sure that when you come in and you have a religious diet, we cater to that. That was a part of what we put together. And when our budget was passed, we got the increase we needed. Now, you will see a decrease because that's based on population. We didn't get to the population that we anticipated, which was 1,000. And so we are only at 650. And the decrease that was taken was because of that, not necessarily to do with the quality, because the quality of the food is still there, and it has improved significantly. And when the inmates rioted, when they did the hostage situation, this was back in August, I want to be clear because they didn't ask for better food, they asked for emos. So do we do outside food sometimes? Maybe once, twice a year, but we don't cater to, we don't do outside food internally. So we tried to get to the why of the situation. The why was because they wanted things their way. Prior to me arriving, I found that they were running the jail and they were doing things to one another. And then the CJC was responsible for their actions. So when looking at things, we had to make some changes. And that is what, we changed the food to, when I first got here, to try to make it better. It was better. We got new servingware. We got new everything so that we can ensure that, hey, when they said the food trays were nasty or cruddy or old or whatever, we replaced that. The cups, we gave everybody their own cups so nobody had to share because of what COVID. And then on top of that, it's just better because when you give somebody something, we give them their own stuff. It's a little bit better instead of having it go back to food service. They can wash their own thing. But overall, when they did the hostage situation, they asked for it. And we were already serving them food that was decent because we taste tested it, me and my staff.
All right, thank you.
Alderman.
That's all I have.
Alderman Oldenburg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have no questions at this time. Thanks.
Alderwoman Velazquez.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, Commissioner Abdullah. I just have to say, I think there's a missed opportunity here. There's been obviously there's been deaths at the CJC, and the budget tends to be an opportunity for us to understand, I think, as Madam Chair said, what you need to be successful. And you've got members of the public here who want to know what's going on. And frankly, the fact that you didn't come in here and paint a bigger picture is a little bit troubling, at least for me, because I'll tell you, I'm new on budget committee and I'm trying to understand, again, ways to help you. So I have some very specific questions, but I just think that there's a real missed opportunity for you to show us what you're working on and also what you need to be successful. And we're trying to kind of pull apart from the budget the items that we think are doing that, but you could do that too. So with that, back to the salary discussion, you mentioned that obviously you're understaffed, and I think, as Madam Chair said, that you're pulling the position. So I just want to clarify, I see an almost 900,000 line item increase for overtime. Is that because you're anticipating not hiring those folks and you're not filling those positions, and that 900,000 is in overtime?
Well, no, the overtime is kind of a picture of what we're doing. It's not we're not anticipating that's what we're doing. I don't think, because we're not at the end of the year, so it's not encompassing all of the full year for what we actually spent on overtime. So do we have a lot of it? Yes, because of the positions. You want me to paint you a picture regarding staffing. Let me say it to you like this. Nobody grows up and say, I want to work in a jail when I grow up. Oftentimes it's happenstance. You go to college, or you, by word of mouth, you hear about a jail hiring. People usually seek it because it has benefits. It's a stable environment, but it's an environment that yet is changing internally because you're always doing things. So it's hard, because of the city of St. Louis and the reputation that it has, it's hard to recruit staff. It doesn't make it easy when you're continually on the news. When you look at the deaths, it's not as though the deaths were caused by negligence. We're in a city. We're not like a country town. And when I say in the city, you have opportunity to get involved in a lot of things. When you come inside a facility, oftentimes people are addicted to drugs. So you don't know what you don't know. You don't know that someone is ailing from something else and still has an addiction, right? So our medical staff is trying to determine what's what. So it's hard to paint a picture when you don't have the full, you have an X, just like in math, it's an unknown thing. And you don't know the people that you're going to get. You don't know the encounters that's going to be there. All we know is that when people start yelling and screaming about certain things, they don't have all the facts. And I can't put somebody's information out because it's a HIPAA violation. It's a privacy issue. But what I can say, we're going to do the best that we can with what we have. The budget is painting a picture to show you that we don't have the staffing. We're seeking the staffing. We're offering hiring incentives. We're all over social media platform. Someone asked me, did I think it was good to put it on billboards? I think it's a waste of money because a lot of people are going to social media sites. They're not actually doing it. So I want to be a good steward of the city's money. We're doing some things, and we're collaborating with Department of Health in order to ensure that when they're looking at numbers, they're looking at certain things. I'm looking at boots on the ground, and I'm looking at what's actually being done. So we collaborate extensively on a weekly basis, on a daily basis, about some of the things that are going on to try to, come to a happy medium or where we're covering all the bases if somebody comes in that's ill. So to say the numbers say a thing, it does. It's telling you that we don't have, we got people coming out of school, high school every year. We just don't have enough people applying. Do we need those officers to run run the operation? Sure, yes, we do. So what we're trying to do, that's why it's all related. It's all relative. When the alder lady asked about staffing and them doing when she was talking about how they get out, that's all related. It's all related to the staffing, to the food, to the everything. So we want to make sure everybody eats. We want to make sure everybody gets health care. And I'll be honest with you, when health care is first and foremost. And so when someone comes and they said, hey, we need to look at somebody, we need to do a H&P, a health and physical examination on 10 inmates, and we have to lock the unit down, I would prefer to lock the unit down and get those 10 inmates that need to be looked at because we may be able to detect something because they have to do it within a certain time frame. We want to ensure that they meet that time frame. So when you talk about a picture being painted, it's almost like saying, hey, let's walk down the city block and see what we see. It's everything going on. It's all kind of moving parts. And with those moving parts, we're trying to get to a point where we are fully operational with staffing. However, we recognize that we are low on staffing. Our complement analysis says what we need, but what we have is not there. Our recruitment efforts are there. We're doing everything possible. We are doing, when I say everything possible, every time we went to an NCCHC conference, this is a healthcare conference, we were tapping into resources to companies to give out our cards, to let them know, hey, we're here. A lot of people say, we get a lot of feedback. They said, you guys are always in the media. Your folks are always talking bad about corrections. We had a lot of people turn down the jobs on the phone. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to create an environment that is welcoming to our staff, taking care of business with the detainees, and at the end of the day, everybody is able to do what they need to do and to be in top, not top health, but at least in a capacity where they can speak and tell us what's wrong.
Right. So when I asked you to paint, when I was saying paint a picture, I meant paint a picture broadly. So what I see in that 900,000 is that you don't have enough staff, and you're anticipating that you're going to have to pay the staff more to work overtime because you're anticipating that you're staff. Right.
We're going to have to pay them. Well, when we have vacancies, say for instance, what usually occurs, and you can't predict it, right? They'll say somebody got sick. And we'll call somebody in and say, hey, can you come in and do this? That's where a lot of the overtime usually is coming from. Healthcare, taking them out. It may be working in a housing unit. It may be working in the front lobby. The overtime is, we have to have it to supplement for the lack of staffing.
Right. I'm not questioning I guess in the broader picture, and I still haven't heard a clear answer, I think, for the optimal number of staff for you successful, but all these things tie together, right? So I'm just asking you, simply is what I assume, and I think you're saying it, is that overtime is because you're anticipating, right? We cannot predict the future, that you're going to have to supplement the staff you have. It's going to have to work overtime.
Yes, and it's
I'm
based on
sorry.
historical
I'm
data.
sorry. Excuse me, Alderman Velazquez. They're saying I can barely hear you.
Is that better?
Can you speak up?
Speak up.
You turn our volume up a little. Thank you.
All right, I'll try and speak. I think that's better. Okay. Well, then let's just move on. I know that there was an increase in healthcare supplies, and we heard from Dr. Mahdi earlier this week about the program that that the health department is going to be launching. There was an increase. Can you just talk about the increase in healthcare supplies, or the reason for the increase in the budget? And I have to look at the line item.
Wait a minute, is it on my budget or her budget?
It's on your budget.
Okay, that is for healthcare supplies, is usually AED, scuba, SCBAs, things that could help in when things happen in an emergency situation. Like I said, AEDs, fire extinguishers to ensure when things go off. When it comes to healthcare, it's just not just healthcare stuff, it's stuff related to it. Buying beds, medical beds, things like that.
Okay. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderwoman Saunier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hi, Commissioner.
Hi.
Thanks for being with us today. I would probably just start off by, yes, thanking you. And then I'm not sure, I don't want to speak for Alderwoman Velazquez, but I think I do know like a lot of the things that have been in the media have been negative, and I know you talked about that hurting your ability to kind of be able to attract staff. And so I think whenever you get a chance to come in front of the public, when they're here in front of us, or when you're in front of the legislative members, you kind of opened up by saying, I don't oppose the budget. I think going a little bit into detail and it could have been like kind of an opportunity, which I think we'll do with our questions, to just kind of explain to the public, hey, here are some of the things that we know that have been a challenge, and here are some of the things in the budget that we have specifically asked for, had conversations around, so that we can address some of those problems that, you know, we all know that exist. I don't want to speak for anybody, but I know that's just kind of, you know, my feeling in it. And I know it can be hard when there has been a lot of negative media attention, but that's why I always encourage us, when we get our own opportunities to set our own narratives and tell our own stories, I think it's important whenever we can do that with the public to do that, because the media and us are often not on the same page. One of the things that I wanted to look at a little bit and maybe have you elaborate on that I think is great is that there is a couple of $1 million difference in the medical care investments between the investment last year and the investment this year. And Dr. Marty was before us recently, and she talked about that. So anything that you think, if you could just elaborate a little bit on how some of those resources and that investment will help us to make sure that detainees are getting the adequate medical attention that they need while they're in there. If you could speak to what some of the specifics of those additional allocations, what they would be going to.
Are you speaking, which line item, I'm sorry?
I mean, several, but particularly there's, and I scrolled elsewhere, so 1 second. I'm on the online book, so it might look a little different from yours, but it just says medical care, and we can see what it was for last year. It looks like it was increased this year, and I would imagine it has something to do with Dr. Mahdi's added role and switching to the Department of Health, but it's in your budget line item. But in general, if you want to just speak in general, I'm sure you've been a part of those conversations. So in general, just using this as an opportunity to talk about some of the specific investments that have been made to make sure that detainees are going to be getting adequate medical care while they're there.
Yeah, you know, we got that, those 11 positions, right? So we got a CMO, a chief medical officer. That is helping us look at our contractor, what they're providing, how they're providing. Are they giving us adequate services? Are they giving us, are they meeting inmate health and physical wellness checks? I'll say this, a lot of the things we do that the health department is bringing on board is really helping paint a bigger picture and a better picture to get the help of where we're, because, you know, being a commissioner is one thing, but being a doctor is another. And having Dr. Mahdi involved has helped tremendously. I give her much thanks because it really has put us in a place where we need to be. So in the increases that we do have, when they come and they say, I wanted to kind of invest in a Pyxis system where the medication comes out, but that's a little, it just disseminates the medication. It doesn't give it, I mean, in bulk. It doesn't give the medication to the detainee. So I said, well, no, we already have a system in place. So this increase in the various things will help us when it comes to defibrillators or, you know, various things that you would need on the outside, but that we need a correctional grade on the inside. We had oversight come in from NCCHC. And that's they oversee the healthcare nationwide, and they tell us what we need. We came and they came in and they said, hey, you need the little setup to look in the ears in certain places, a new medical bed. We bought all these. We're trying to make sure that we can meet or exceed the goals that is set by NCCHC, so we can provide better health care. So these increases are going to help us in the end. In the end, we're going to need manpower. Manpower is what's going to help us get to our goal of making sure everybody's taken care of.
Thank you. And I was looking at the prisoner medical services line item. I think it's 5615. So that's kind of what I was talking about, but I do see it, you know, throughout various places. On that same note, one of the things we talked about last year, I think, or actually, no, I don't think last year. I think after Dr. Mahdi was added, one of the things that she talked about when she came before us, and we talked extensively about how a lot of detainees do have substance use and other chronic mental health issues. And so the real need for a real psychiatric medical doctor to be there on site. And at that time, when she was before us, she said that it was basically in a hiring process and there was a hopeful candidate but couldn't say too much. Can you give us an update on that?
Since that comes out of her department, I'm gonna have to leave that with her. But I know that she's working diligently to get what we need. And they're looking at the setup that the actual healthcare contract has to see if it's meeting, and I think they have some numbers. I'm not sure if they're actually finished. Some numbers about, are we meeting those people that are arrested when they're detoxing? The requirements or what they're needing to kind of level themselves out when they come inside of a correctional facility.
Do you know, is the position filled? I guess that was a real update.
The CMO is,
Okay.
but I don't know, the other ones, I'm not
Can't
sure.
speak. Okay. The other thing that I wanted to ask about, I know we had also talked about, do you know who the specific medical contractor is, or is that still up for?
We have the one we have currently is an emergency medical contractor. It's PCUSA. We're expecting for the medical healthcare contract, the RFP June, I think it's the close date, June 19th, I think is the website says. And we'll be able to know if we have submittals for our healthcare beginning December 1st.
And that's so that you can have ongoing medical services rather than just the emergency.
Correct.
Okay. My other question was, I know one of the things I learned about too in CJC is maybe also kind of tied to the pandemic, but I think Alderwoman Boyd mentioned how long detainees are in the facility, which sometimes can be years. And so one of the things I asked about when we got a tour on as a public safety committee and other things was about the programming and, you know, what types of educational and other programming are being offered to the detainees. I did see that your budget has a position for a program specialist, level 2. I did only see one of those in there. And then I also tried to look for like specifics as far as like what is the programming that's being offered. And I found a line item for education and training services for, I think, 8,000, but I couldn't find much else. So I guess my question to you is, can you tell me a bit about like what are the programming and training opportunities that are being involved? And when you were having this budget conversation, and especially considering how long detainees are there, did you kind of look into being able to offer additional training and educational opportunities to detainees while they're in the facility?
So we get volunteers for to come in. Currently, we have a 24/7 DAD program for the males. We got the Soul Fisher Ministries that come in. They do their programming. We have we have GED. We have which is called HISET. They come in and these programs are free to us because the GED program is through the SLM Public School, St. Louis Public School District. A lot of people come in and they volunteer their services, which is helpful to us. And when it comes to branching out, to giving them something, what we'll use is, say, something that when inmates buy commissary, we'll use that funding and we want to partner with, let me go back. We want to partner with the community college. If we use the commissary funding for that to help further their education once they get the GED, we can help them get an associate's or whatever with those commissary, with the money we make from the commissary funds. We don't have a specific line item for inmate training, detainee training, because oftentimes it's done like with food service. They do it in-house and they'll give them a safe serve, which is what you need to go out and work inside of a food service, right? Serve safe or safe serve, some to that effect. What we want to try to do is we want to try to see if we can get a curriculum together to say, hey, they're working so many hours, they did this while they were here, and get our food service vendor to certify it. These things don't cost us anything because we got those people in-house. If they're already considered maybe a chef or something, these people can maybe be qualified under that. This is something that the feds use, which is also a model that we should use if they're going to be there. But we have seen a slight turnover, and I say a slight turnover. Most people are not there 3 and 4 years like they were before because the courts have been moving. So, which is good for that, that they don't have to come and stay long. But all of the programming that we're doing is either supported by the public school district or volunteers that are coming in. And we encourage people to apply for volunteer, to come in and volunteer, because we do have Reverend Barr that comes in also that does an addiction program. So it's helpful.
So to be clear, though, you're saying that the city, like as a city, we don't necessarily spend money on having specific programs available to detainees. I guess my concern would be if things are based off of volunteers and kind of informal agreements. Are there MOUs? Is there something formally that will make sure that those opportunities will be offered on a consistent basis? That's my concern. If it's all informal and voluntarily, how will you make sure that it's going to be consistent and someone can't just pull out?
Well, what they usually do is we have a system where they submit their name, application, and what they're trying to do, and we ensure that they come. If they say it's going to be a 6-week program, we ensure that they come every day for 6 weeks, like they're supposed to, right? So we have somebody account for their time to ensure that the program is successful. Because most people that come in and volunteer, they're really serious about their volunteering and getting the detainee tools they can use. Because we can talk about getting giving them some training, but when you don't have the life skills to know how to pay a bill or be able to apply for certain things to get a discount, not necessarily a discount, but what do you call you put in for grant funding for certain things to get services at your home, whether it be lights, gas, or whatever. We like people to come in like the Soul Fisher Ministries, like Reverend Barr, because these are the people that they're coming in and they're giving detainees life skills, and sometimes they're missing that because they forget because they've been in CJC for 3-6 months. And sometimes you just forget the basic things. And so volunteers are good because they're giving them tools to put in their toolbox to help them get where they need to be.
I guess, so if we are saving money on programming, I think, I've heard over and over, like people discussing kind of the behavior of detainees. So I would say maybe something to think about in the future. If we are saving money on the programming, maybe there's a way to incentivize detainees for participating in the program. I think that the city should be making some type of investment in the programming happening and in making sure that it's taken up. And I know if we're concerned about just releasing detainees and them having space outside, you could do an anger management class, you can do an interpersonal communications class. And if we're able to get the volunteers to do it for free, I think the city should still be sowing a seed. And maybe the way you sow a seed is there's a program that, hey, upon your release, we give you a certain credit for all the classes that you completed or the certificates, but I think there might be room for exploration to figure out how, I think you're saying like, okay, we're saving on the front end because we have volunteers doing it, then how can we make sure that investment goes back to the detainees maybe, and maybe can help you and, the staff there, because if there's incentives to then, kind of comply with the rules and learn how to have communication with folks in such close quarters and deal with your anger and other things that might be helpful. Mm-hmm. We might be too far along, but that's something that I would like to see kind of in the future. And then on that same note, speaking of just programs, I wanted to learn a little bit more information, especially since we're just kind of talking publicly about how our commissary works and how it's ran. Is the commissary something that is it something that we profit from, or is it?
We sell, say for instance, we sell coffee. It may be $1.20. Out of the $1.20, we may get 20 cents, right? We take that, we put it in a pot. We usually buy uniforms, mattresses, things that help us to help them. I say help them, because you want to change a uniform, we got to have a laundry. We buy soap for the laundry to be able to process. They may buy T-shirts. Well, they want to get those T-shirts washed once, twice a week. We let them put them in a bag, and we wash them for them. So we don't charge them anything for that, but commissary has always been there. And I want to get to, like I was telling the guys, we had about 5 or 6 that graduated with the 24/7 dad. I want to see them go further. If you have your GED, if you have your high school diploma, let's get you enrolled in a local community college to further things. I think that if we utilize it for that, it would be helpful. We just have to, you have to change the mindset. And when you change the mindset, then we can do some things. And that's what I was talking to them about. They were at a particular unit. And I said, you guys, I'm kind of surprised that you guys finished. We have to realize that sometimes if you're used to a certain things, it's going to be, it takes a lot for a person to change and become and want a program and be productive. So what we're trying to do is just get them in a mindset where we can give them 24/7 DAD, we can give them an opioid addiction class, we can give them these little tidbits to see, hey, let's move along. If you can successfully complete this, then we can give you a bigger task and say, hey, let's get you enrolled in community college. And those are some of the things that I want to advance to, but it's going to take a second. And I say take a second because, well, like I say, we got to get them to unlearn certain things.
I guess I wanted to know too, like, of course I understand how commissaries work, but are we, the things that detainees are having to buy in commissaries, like, are we charging people for toothpaste or tampons or, you know, what are household, what types of household items are we giving access to from being in the facility versus that you have to be able to buy through commissary?
We give them a hygiene pack every week, and it has soap, it has a toothbrush, it has toothpaste. The females do not have to pay for any hygiene, feminine hygiene products. Those come by way of the state, and I think they get federal funding, and then it trickles down to every jail within the state of Missouri. So whether it be tampons, pads, liners, whatever, the females are able to get that. Now, if you prefer Tampax versus whatever, then you're able to go to commissary and still get that. Now, we don't really generally sell a lot of it because we give a lot of it to them for free.
But is it fair to say that a detainee would not be in a position where they have to buy things for their basic hygiene or needs
Correct.
from commissary?
Yeah, they don't. Like I said, soap, toothpaste, toothbrush, deodorant, pads, all those things are supplied.
Thank you. I guess my last set of questions, one of the things that did get a lot of media attention and was kind of talked about a lot was access to the facility, who does, who doesn't. I know that you came before public safety. We had a conversation. I believe you changed your policy. Specifically, I'm asking about the one that was around attorneys having access to it. Because I know we kind of had I got information through the chair of public safety about some of the conversations, but could you speak to some of that, some of those changes?
So the phones are for the attorneys are allowed back in, and the paper pass is closed. But when they say, hey, we need to give them a document, we do open up the paper pass, let them have access to it, and then close it back. Because that way we keep that attorney-client privilege open for them.
So each attorney would have to request, they just need to let a guard know that I need to pass the paper, and then you guys want to do it rather than leaving it open, period, during a visit.
Right. We just don't leave it open for it's just a safety and security issue.
But right now, from your policies, because I do understand there's another department that has done some other policy changes, but from your policies right now, there's nothing that's keeping an attorney from bringing a laptop or any electronic equipment or passing papers when they need to.
Correct. Nothing prohibited. No.
Okay, that's great, because I'll just let you know, I did file a bill, Board Bill 11, that is tied to giving attorneys access. I think it's aligned with your changes, but I just wanted to flag that while we were here.
Yeah, they have access.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alderwoman Sonier. Alderman Aldridge.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. When you're at the end, a lot of the questions already been asked that I was thinking of. My colleagues asked good questions. I do want to get, and because I've been in and out, I want to get back to the emergency contract that was put in place. So the emergency contract that Dr. Mahdi is, I guess, kind of over, that is still in place at the current moment, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and I do got to give her flowers. Dr. Mahdi does great holistic work. So hopefully with her being in place, like you say, I think in your time of 26 months, it's been about, what, 6, 7 deaths at the jail?
No, it's probably been about 9.
About 9. Appreciate you being honest. So hopefully with that, with Dr. Mahdi being over, it's less of that. And then you say I'm going to go out to RFP for the...
It's already out.
It's already out. And when that closes...
June 19th, I think.
Okay. You had talked about food, which had like triggered something. So the old food, what you saying was, you had said like chicken, so it wasn't the actual meat or it wasn't the actual food.
Right.
Was it like slop or?
No, it was some type of protein pellet. I'm not real sure. I hadn't.
A protein pellet.
Pellet. Like,
Okay.
I don't know. It's not a. I don't even know how to describe it. I just look at it and I said it didn't look good, right?
And that was, I guess, during your time and you saying y'all changed those food vendors?
Yes. Well, we didn't change food vendors. What we did was we required them, instead of using partially separated, I think was the term, partially separated chicken or something to that effect, and then protein pellets, they would put it into the food to help it swell.
Oh, Lord.
I'm just giving you, I'm thinking out loud. I'm probably being too honest, but
Well, I know this board appreciate, honestly, I know maybe sometimes people that's over, like you said too much, but we want to help, and we don't want, I mean, nobody wants to continue to see the jail in the way that it is, or deaths happening. So we may criticize on this side. The intention is good. I know some others may be like said too much, but only way we can help at the board is, be honestly, so.
yeah. Well, I'll be honest with you. When I came on a unofficial tour, it was in August, 2021. When I left, I said, change that food. I guess he thought I was playing. But when I came back and I reported on September 13th, that's the first place I went was food service. I think sometimes how we do things, how we act, how our body is shaped, how we wind up gaining weight is related to what we consume. And I'm a big proponent of giving them something decent to help them feed the mind to be a better, because sometimes, it may be, we don't know. There's nothing to support that, but I think that if we feed them better food, it'll be a better outcome. So it has really helped them, and it has been better.
And how many meals they get a day? Is it breakfast, lunch, dinner?
Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and those with diabetic, they'll get a sandwich, something that is made from food service.
Okay. What was my other ones? I got a few other ones. So how many correctional officers do you currently have at the moment?
Correctional officers,
And is that-
civil ones, we have about 85 is the most update number I think I got, around 85, 83, 85.
Is that correctional officer 1?
Yes.
Okay. And then correctional officer 2s, is those people that also monitor pods, or those like supervisors?
Yeah, they come in and may relieve the CO ones, the correctional officer ones. They help maintain order, cater to if the detainees need something, they help with the CO ones.
Okay. And there's always word with the budget of when, I guess, it's put in and when not, because under correctional officer 1, it looks like you ended the fiscal year with 71, not 85.
Yeah, I think this was back in April. We've hired some people. So I think when I got with my payroll folk, I think they said it was up to about 83.
Gotcha. And then it's hiring for, I know you had mentioned it, and I know the chairwoman had brought it up. So it wasn't necessarily you couldn't hire because of the hiring freeze,
Right.
but because of the Taleo, which is under personnel and the new system. And as of quote unquote Monday, that hiring freeze may be lifted if Jeff City don't do whatever they gonna do. So what is your, because I mean, I think more correctional officers could be beneficial because it makes sure, I just think 2 days ago, there was a situation of an inmate and a correctional officer and an inmate that had to go to the hospital. What is the goal to try to recruit? I think you probably talked about it a little bit, like how are y'all going out to try to recruit more officers to make sure that also the inmates are safe? Because I got another question to that, but.
Yeah, we're doing, like I said, social media. We're tapping into resources, people we know, leaving flyers, giving cards, giving a retention incentive of $3,500. It was initially about $1,500, and we increased that. I can't say enough about Department of Public Personnel because they're going above and beyond, coming up, being creative on how we can get staff and retain them. So it's just a slow process, getting the word out.
So they cut 65 correctional officers, I think 60, like that from your budget?
Well, let's say this. They may have cut it as far as salary goes, but we still have it on our table of organization
Yeah,
because,
so you could always come back and fill it. But
yes,
with that, because what's like an average pay of a correctional officer one?
right now about 46,000,
And then two is probably,
starting at 52.
okay. I was just asking that with that cut, is there any thought in this committee has been talking about it? Because clearly for several years, probably even before you, the correctional department hasn't filled the level of what they needed to. Same with police. I know they'll be in here next. They, a lot of these departments ask for all these positions, but, never get to that level because instead of working for the city, I could go work for Clayton or I can go work for a private industry and make more money. Is there any thought with your cut of those positions of trying to potentially use that in a way of more pay for correctional officers to keep them or retain more?
It's all, I don't know if you know it, but I always ask personnel to increase CO1, CO2. So I'll go back to the well again. Right now, I think we're ahead of St. Louis County, St. Charles. And so I heard they went to the board, went to their folks and got an increase for their correctional officers because we had came up and we were meeting or exceeding what they were. I think at the end, we all have to keep chugging away to say, hey, let's get a better environment, a safer environment that's going to help us recruit better staff. And in the end, I think it's just getting the word out, but getting the word out not in a negative way. That's going to help us recruit folks.
Yeah. Well, I know we also stopped at 3% raise because of maybe potential of the earnings tax, but I hope the mayor end up deciding to put that back in. I know there's plenty of lawsuits that is pending your way from either families or from just multiple individuals. Does all those lawsuits, which city taxpayers eventually got to pay for, do those come out of your budget where we're able to see them, or does that come from city council?
I don't know. I can't answer that. I don't know.
Okay. I'm not asking about like the individual lawsuits, but just were those. I was curious if that is, do y'all have a pot in y'all fund for lawsuits, or is that probably a city full pot for all the lawsuits?
It's probably a city pot. I never seen.
So on an average of like right now over there in the facility, on a regular day, how many officers are working during the daytime, evening time?
It varies because during the day you may have 25, right? Because, people's rest days. In the evening time, it may be 20. It may be 30. It just depends on how many we got scheduled, how many are off, because FMLA plays a role, vacation plays a role, lack of staffing plays a role. So it may go from 35 to 25 to 20.
So on a good day, we say it's 35 and it's about 600-ish inmates, you said?
Yes.
So I want to kind of get back to the question of the rotation. So before the pandemic, inmates used to all be able to be out together, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And you're saying after the pandemic to keep people safe, which the pandemic is now kind of gone. We're gone. We ain't wearing masks. Like, we all in contact. What is the plan to make sure that people are able to be out together again? Because I hear you say the rotation, and I know from our end, we've heard from inmates that they're on lockdown for like very long hours, and especially if you only got 25 or on a good day, 35 guards and 600 staff, that rotation probably can take a while. And when we visited several floors, several pods. So is there a plan to try to minimize, I think when you keep somebody locked up in a pod for a long time and they don't have nothing to do, some say, they've been in pods where it's just not safe or healthy due to whatever reason, you're going to end up making people turn up and get upset where we see the riot. So is there any plan to try to get inmates out back in like they were in the past, where maybe they have more time out of the pod than in the pod?
We want to. We have a desire to allow it to be like it was, where you have 60, 70 people in a pod out. It's not safe to do so. I'm saying that from a standpoint of this. I can't say names, but what I can say, there's litigation. There was some things went on in a pod with everybody out. And I'm gonna tell you this, I would hate to have my relative be in a pod with 60 people and people standing up talking or whatever, and because you're there, you're trying to manage a situation. You're trying to manage all these people out in the pod. If my relative was followed to his room and things happen, then the agency, the city, is responsible. Doing it as a rotating like this, we ensure that they are safe. If you cannot ensure their safety, we can't ensure their safety when you have 60 people out because you don't know who's who. People are oftentimes not forthcoming in who they know and how they know them. I don't want anybody, and I promise you I don't, to leave there and say maimed or deceased because we allowed 60, 70, 80 people out in a pod. It's not incumbent. I'll be honest with you, that's why we're a holding facility, and we try to make their stays as short as possible because we want to make sure that everybody goes home safe. And because of that litigation, it has stuck in my mind, and I think it happened back in 19 or so, 20, and I just want to make sure that everybody's safe. I don't think, I can't let you know how that makes me feel to know somebody comes and can't leave like they left, like they came. So I want to make sure at the end of the day, we rotate them, and that's why we want to make sure the housing units are first staffed, and that we staff them first, and then we go everywhere else, because we want to make sure that rotation stays up.
Gotcha. And a few more questions. I know we're getting close on. Oh, I think we passed. Oh, I said 10:30 for the police. We passed the time, but it's okay. Well, just a few more. So when they get out, how long are they out? So if it's 2 people to a pod, correct?
It's about 80. 82.
Well, not to a pod, to a cell. It's 2 people in a cell.
Yes.
So you let cells out.
6 at a time, so 12 people out.
Okay.
Come out for about an hour and a half. They go back, hour and a half, the next hour and a half, the next 6 come out. They come in.
So they probably only getting out one time? Because that's a lot.
They should be getting out 2 to 3 times a day, because
that's a lot of if it's a lot of rotation with 6.
we keep it going. We try to keep it going. And I'm on them all the time because I think it's healthy. And when it boils down to it, we're trying to get it where when behavior permits, and I say behavior because when you come out and you're fighting one another, just like you said about the situation, we could control that. Those are situations where it's almost, it's not an everyday occurrence that they fight officers, but that is something that stops the rotation. And the guys want to keep it going, and I understand that. So we try to keep, extract the what's going on, who created the chaos, and keep it going.
Okay. One last question that I.
When it was on 23-hour lockdown, 23-hour lockdown is not keeping people safe. Hello.
So I got one more last question. Is there somewhere in the line or the budget line item that I'm thinking of recreation? When we toured, there was a room that was supposed to be a recreation room, but the basketball was flat, the hoop was on the ground. So that it was just another pod, if you really want to say. And then also the tablets we talked about. Not each inmate gets their own tablet for either educational or if they want to play a game. Get rid, I know in the county, every individual have their own tablet. I know the way that y'all have it was like locked up. Is there any line item in here that is for rec? Because unlike the CJC, which is, kind of was inhumane, there was space for them to go out. In the CJC, there's no outside, they don't see sunlight, and I know the walls are now covered. So is there any funds for rec to be able to make sure they actually have true recreation?
Okay. Yes. Those goals that were taken down, they damaged them. Those flat balls that you've seen, they made them flat. So we're in the process. We did buy goals, and we're putting new ones up so they can go inside of the rec cage. What we're trying to do is make sure we have to get something that accounts for the handballs and the basketballs and things like that. We do have a budget for that. Well, let me say this. We spend what we get on the commissaries to purchase the balls and things like that. We actually bought chess and checker things. However, they were taking them and stuffing them in the locks. So do you want me to keep them safe? Or, I mean, and I have to talk to them and I tell them, what do you want? You want to do wreck or are you trying to damage the lock? And at the end of the day, they say, we want to wreck. Well, if you're going to wreck, well, then we want you to, but don't damage the items. Over the last 6 months, we've had over 1,200 tablets damaged. 1,200. We only got 647 detainees. And so they're damaging them at an alarming rate. And what we're trying to do is say, hey, we're giving them basically 1-for-1 tablets. And we started that. We've always kind of had 1-for-1, and we just let it dwindle down because they were damaging him. So we just had one detainee take some water and pour it down, and he says, I don't want my fellow detainees to have access to the tablets. What do you want me to do? I mean, that's where we're at. We're getting people damaging it because they don't want Spencer to come out tomorrow to get a tablet first. So, I mean, these are instances. This is not a every other month occurrence. This is a daily occurrence inside the facility.
Okay. This is my last question. What's the update on the locks?
We are complete. They finished back in January. We were just waiting on some the officer stations to be completed, and then we can fill the other units on the second floor.
Okay. I got to jump on personnel, Madam Chair, so I got to go.
Okay, thank you, Alderman Aldrich. I have a question that was relayed to me as the chair from a member of the Board of Aldermen who is not present, related to the revenue line for the CJC pertaining to telephones. And can you speak, the budget for that line item, the revenue is lower than last year's, and so the concern was whether or not detainees have adequate access to telephones.
They do. What line item are you looking at?
This is in the revenue book, so if I'm in
What
the revenue
page?
book, page 20, looking at line.
Most people don't bring the revenue book, so you may not have it.
Yeah, so I mean, I understand that. It's not going to be in the line item detail because that line item expenditure side, so this is the operating plan. But if I'm looking at the revenue line, Fund 1111, corrections, phone communication. So last year, actual was 367,000, and this year is projected 265,000.
We were giving, we let the PD phones, the phones up on second floor, they're all free to call from. So that kind of lowers the commission. It's a lot of things like for Mother's Day, we made sure the females detainees were able to call with no cost to them. So little instances like that kind of affect it. Actually, too, we have a lot of people with mental health, and so they don't like to utilize the phones. If they do, we provide it to them. However, that plays a role too. And usually if we get a call from a parent or whoever to say they with someone that may have some mental health issues, we ensure that those calls are made and it's free to them. We'll pull them in the office and let them make a call to their parent.
Okay, so there's no access to phone issue, or that hasn't decreased in any way?
No.
Access, okay. So thank you for that. I do want to say too, I mean, for next year especially, and if you'd like to come back with a presentation, I mean, I think that this is an opportunity, as several of the committee members pointed out. Typically, and not only is it an opportunity, but it's common for department heads to kind of present their budget, their mission, what they're working on. It is an opportunity to educate the Board of Aldermen, the public, and to really just kind of tell the story of what's going on in the department. So I'd really encourage you to do that next year. If you'd like to come back, there's always an opportunity to do that, but it really is an important story to tell, and it's helpful to understand the mission and the things that are happening within the facility, the only facility that the city really houses people in, and it's very important function. We're handling human beings, and their well-being is in our custody overnight for periods of time. And as we've pointed out, the news regarding the people that we are charged with caring for, the news hasn't been positive. And so we're here to help. We want to make sure that you have the tools you need to protect and serve those folks in our custody. And so if there are gaps, it is our job to ask the tough questions and make sure that, if there are gaps, we can work to fill them for you. With that, I'll turn it over to my colleague from the 6th Ward for one final question before inviting.
Well, I just really want to just add to what Madam Chair just said. I would actually encourage you, if it's okay, and you would, I know we've got a busy schedule, but for you to come back before the end of this year, with a presentation. I think given everything that has happened, I think all the folks on this committee said, we're here to help you, but if we don't understand, we can't do. And certainly I think the public does have a right to understand too, right? And we have an obligation as members of the city to do that, not only be transparent, but to communicate in a way that is accessible. So I would encourage you to do that before our budget cycle concludes this year.
Okay.
Recognize the tough job that you do have. While I haven't spent a lot of time in this particular facility, I was a volunteer at the Juvenile Detention Center for 10 years. And ran a program there for children that were incarcerated, have been incarcerated within our system. Those relationships with volunteers is a tenuous one, can be. I found the programming there at least 10 years ago to be very welcoming to volunteers. I really enjoyed and grew personally from that experience, and I think that it was very productive. But it is one that is tenuous. So, I think that those questions and that the line of thought is very, very, very helpful. It is a challenge, but I think it's important for us all to remember that those folks that are in our custody, the vast majority of them re-enter our community, and everything we can do to help them on their journey to become, coming back into our communities, living with us, being our neighbors, and being part of our city is important work and valuable work. Alderman Aldridge, did you have a closing thought before we close out and move on to SLMP?
One last quick question. On your policy for visitations for elected officials, is there a policy? Because I know there's kind of one, kind of not one. And I know there's legislation pending. Do you have a official policy on?
It's online, yes.
Okay. I'll check it out.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner. Leslie, because we've had the chief waiting for 40 minutes now.
Yeah.
That's okay.
I don't think it'll be time to do it for this one, but I would love to see maybe in the future a line item for the commissary budget. I would love to see how much we actually do make. I think we can probably see it in other ways in terms of the uniforms and other things you invested in, but I would love to see just a detailed line item of exactly what is the profit from that, as a revenue. It is a source of revenues that's used invested in other things.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner. As we bring in the chief, I just want to recognize that we have a large number of members of the public here. Thank you for being here today. It's important that I just want to commend you all for spending your morning here. I know these are really tough issues, ones that are very emotional. Thank you for remaining quiet so that we can conduct our hearing in a way that isn't disruptive. So I just wanted to recognize that. And then can we bring in the chief to then hear now St. Louis SLMPD and the police department. I know. Chief, thank you for being here today. As I've kind of mentioned to previous speakers, I think you probably know the drill. We'll start out with whatever presentation you'd like to offer. Any staff members that you have with you, introduce yourself as well as them for members of the public who are watching who may not know who you are or who your staff are. And we'll invite you to give a presentation, and then we'll turn it over to the committee for questions. But most importantly, I want to thank you for being here today. Thank you for accommodating our schedule. I know that you're early, and we've put you behind a little bit.
All right, well, thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. With me today, well, first of all, Police Chief Robert J. Tracy of the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department, thank you for having me. And with me today, I have our Fiscal Management, David Daniels, who will be with us today. Also, our Director of Public Affairs Division, Mitch McCoy, and then also, I want to get a title right, Monet. Monet is one of our executive assistants from our office, Monet Cintron, that came with me from Wilmington and is helping me run things administratively and operationally in the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department.
Chief, I just want to, my apologies for interrupting, but I do know we were having issues hearing, so if you could try, I know it's going to be difficult, but try to make sure you speak into the microphone. Yeah.
How's that?
That's excellent.
So my apologies. Chief Robert J. Tracy, St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department. With me here today is the Fiscal Manager, David Daniels, our Director of Public Affairs Division, Mitch McCoy, and Executive Assistant from the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department, Monet Cintron. Thank you for having me today, Madam Chair and members of the committee. And what I'd like to do, if it's okay with you, Madam Chair, I'd like to give a presentation of the budget. David Daniels has done this for years. I'd like him to go through those lines. I have some added comments, and then should open it up for questions if it's okay with you, Madam Chair.
That would be excellent. Thank you.
All right. So I'm going to invite Fiscal Manager David Daniels up to the podium. Dave.
Good morning, Dave.
Morning. I'll put it here. Decide.
You had something you wanted to pass out. I'm sure we could.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay. And again, what I just passed out to you, a little too close. What I just passed out to you, I apologize for the small size of the font, but it's the only way to keep it manageable, right? This is just across the top, this is just a listing of all our funding sources. So we have, starting at the far left, the police general fund budget, then the marshals, the park rangers, and then all of the different, use tax, gaming, graduate business license, and all the sales taxes that are used to support the work of the police department. And then I draw your attention to the second page at the very bottom. Our fiscal 25 total is essentially flat compared to the previous year. It's only about $300,000 higher. Obviously, some line items are going to be higher or lower than the prior year. But this is the overall city funding for the police department. I have not included pension because that's budgeted separately from the police department. And so, but pension's not included.
Okay, David, I think this is, these are a lot of numbers. What I'm looking at here is a total police department budget of $182.9 million for fiscal year 25.
Right.
Compared to a fiscal year 24 of 182.6 million. Is that correct?
Right.
And then what you've got, these columns are the various
line
fund
items.
forces
Oh, pardon me.
Is that right? So, you've got the use tax fund covering 23 million, gaming fund. I assume the first column is the general fund,
Yes,
the 127 million from the general fund.
yes.
Okay, that's what we have in our budget book, that 127. Okay. It's going to be a little difficult because in our budget book, we've got 127 compared to a proposed budget of 148 million. Is that correct?
Okay, this is 148 for the general fund.
Well, I'm looking at what was requested in the budget
okay.
book. What was requested of the police department was 148.9 million, according to our budget book, the overview.
Yeah, this is just,
What is being proposed by the Board of E&A?
yes, what went through ENA and has now been presented to you.
Okay. Okay. Would you like to, between the chief or yourself or any, would you like to give us kind of an overview of kind of where this year's budget compares to last year? I realize you said it's kind of flat, but there is a discrepancy between what was requested and what was proposed by the Board of E&A. Can you speak a little bit to, I'm assuming your proposed budget was what what the department would need to function optimally, where those differences are, and where we are with this 187.
Oh, okay.
Excuse me, 189. So.
Yeah, well, then it's probably best that we start with just the general fund budget.
Or yeah, I mean, I don't know that it matters exactly where it's coming from. I see where we've got a total requested of 206 from all the different funds. Is that right?
Right.
Okay, and then what was being proposed by the Board of E&A is 189. What? Do you want to talk a little bit about what was proposed, what was requested that wasn't granted?
There were a lot of capital requests that weren't granted, and so there would have been vehicles, there would have been improvements to, for example, on the top of the old headquarters building, there's a tower there that's very old. We proposed moving that tower, and those relocation costs would be fairly high. So that's in the request, but once we get to the point where Paul Payne has said, here, this is the extent of what your allocation is, then we're making cuts, and it doesn't really matter what we might have wanted. And we did let the different divisions of the police department make their sincere requests about what they wanted, but if you wanted a full accounting of everything that got cut out.
Well, I'm looking for broad strokes, like, for example, kind of going through this, I see a significant difference in health and safety equipment, for example. So it was requested $2 million for health and safety equipment. I don't know what that means. I don't know what your health and safety equipment is, but what's being proposed is $600,000. Again, the fleet equipment. So I'm assuming you're looking for some new cars, and that wasn't allocated. Wearing apparel. One of the complaints I've heard, especially from the Ethical Society new recruits, is the allocation of shirts to new officers. If you're a new officer and you only get one shirt that can hold your camera, that's going to be a hardship for you to be able to show up to work on a daily basis if you don't have a washer and dryer in your housing unit. So these are issues that I'm kind of hoping that we can kind of just kind of address from that perspective, but also just kind of hearing the staffing numbers, et cetera, going back to some of the other departments. I know you guys have a very serious deficit, I would say, in what you're allocated on fleet, your staffing positions are, and what you've got filled. So our job here is to just kind of understand what your budget is, where the holes are, what you need to function optimally, and kind of what was cut, what if there needs to be changes.
Okay.
I'm just kind of going through and eyeballing some of this. If there were things you wanted to point out that hey, look.
Okay, so I'd like to start with the salaries and benefits, if I could. So the total salaries and overtime is essentially almost the same. I've increased the amount, or I increased the amount for both civilian and commission overtime, just to reflect what we're actually spending on overtime. Okay. You'll see that there's a fairly significant decrease in salary or commission salaries. That's partly due to, if you go to your personnel schedule.
Okay.
And this is a pretty big item.
The personnel schedule is going to be, is this a total for the entire police department?
No, if you could go to the personal schedule where it has commissioned staff.
Okay, so we're looking at page 319.
I don't have your book.
I think the book is right there. If you need it, Dave, it's right to your left.
Okay.
If you want it.
Well, if you look in the commission staffing, there's a line item, and we've discussed this with one of your members. The attrition staffing adjustments. It's a minus 9.49 million.
Where's this at?
This is the first time I'm seeing this book. They don't print the copies like they used. They don't print all the copies like they used to. 321.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so about halfway down the page. And you'll notice that that number has increased a great deal from the prior year.
Which number are we looking at? This.
Well, so when we're looking at the, there's a lot of numbers. So when we're looking at the staff, okay. So when we're looking at the staffing table, if you notice that the attrition number has increased from a minus 5 million to minus 9.5 million.
Okay, maybe you can give us the number. What is the number you're looking at?
Okay.
You're looking at page 321.
321, and if you go down to about the middle of the page, there's a minus 9,493,000.
Yes,
Okay. So,
this
And
is
then-
decreased from 13 million. Last
Well,
year's
no.
last year was -5.
yes. And that's recognizing the fact that any increase that they might have, the police officer, okay, so our staffing has gone down, obviously.
Your staffing has done what?
Our staffing has decreased. So we're not keeping up with our attrition in terms of attracting new staff and retaining staff.
Okay.
So that number has increased, just to recognize that fact.
Where are you at right now? I'm looking at the latest, the last staffing report that we received, which was in February, has authorized staffing positions for the police department to be at 1,806, with a vacancy of 486, so that puts you at about a 27% vacancy rate in the police department. How many staff members do we currently have? Just
Right now, we have 911 commissioned plus trainee officers in the police department. When I first came aboard, it was close to about 1,000 commissioned police officers and trainees, and that was back in January 9th of 2023. Each year, there's been a marked decrease starting from 2020 going on down, where we've been hit with attrition, where we weren't recruiting as many people that were coming in. And every police department in the United States has felt this. It's a crisis throughout the nation. It's one of the #1 issues that we talk about as organizations and police organizations around the country, and in my counterparts in almost every police department in the United States, especially ones that run cities. I can't speak about small municipalities, but the larger police departments, because of trends of people not wanting to become police officers, but we have slowed down attrition from years past, and this is something that I've testified in Jefferson City when I've testified against state control for local control to keep our police department under the direction of the mayor and also the Board of Alders with that oversight. And some of the things I talked about.
No peace. Defund the police. No justice, 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 no peace. Defund the police.
I'm gonna have to ask,
Defund the police. No justice.
I'm gonna have to ask the clerk to come and get some order in the chambers. Okay. Chief, you were saying you have 911 commissioned.
It's a dynamic report. Some are coming in, some are going. As of Tuesday, when I ran the PeopleSoft report, it's 911 commissioned officers, and that's including individuals, trainees that are in the academy. So that number is probably about a net loss of close to about 90 officers. In years past, the numbers were a lot larger. I'm hoping with the recruitment efforts that we have, things putting up billboards, additional money, $300,000 in the budget for our recruitment team. We're going out to all events, HBCUs, colleges, military bases, people being discharged. We're looking to make sure that we start to bring the amount of applicants coming in, and that has started to increase. So that's pretty promising at this point. I do want to say, for the record, since I've started, there has been a marked increase of the salary. The officers got a $12,000 raise last year. There's an economic reopener that we're looking at as in a collective bargaining agreement with all rank and file this year. That raise was historic. And on top of all the other things, 22 officers that have left this organization. I've sworn back into this organization that were originally St. Louis Metropolitan Police officers have come back. That's bigger than our probably twice the size of our graduating police academy classes. We had 11 graduates a month and a half ago. In July, we'll have 11 more graduates if the number stays as it is. We had 24 that just went in 2 weeks ago. And right now, we have close to 30, 40 applicants that are going through the process. And as soon as they're done, we're going to start another academy class. So these are the things that are starting to change in the time that I've been here. But if I may, I think you've been looking for a few overviews. Our fiscal manager can go line by line and talk about some of the things where some things we've come down in the budget. And as you can see, overall, our budget, if you take our total proposed F25 budget, and I'm just going to read as a summary above, Dave Danielson getting to those numbers crunching, walking with Paul Payne. And if we don't have the answer, we can get back to you through the chair. I would love to do that. But the annual budget, total proposed budget for the police division, excluding grants but including pension costs, is $226 million, maintaining the same level.
Where are you at, Chief?
I'm doing this from an overview. I'm not even looking at the line items. I'm giving you a summary. I'll let Paul Payne, that includes pension. Paul Payne. Sorry, Dave Daniels. I'm just trying to give you a summary. If you want to go line by line, then I'm going to have to give it back to Dave. I just want to give you a quick summary, and then we can dig into some of the things. I think as a presentation, I would love to just get some of these things out there to explain that where we have seen some cuts has been in some capital improvement. We've looked at some things where we're taking care of things in this fiscal year that we're not putting in FY25. We're also looking at there's things that we have proposed for IT improvements that we're going to offset that and try to do that in the next fiscal year. So that's why you've seen some of the places where we've tried to have a budget, do our best to keep up with, as we get salary increase, as Dave would tell you, 92% of our budget is salaries and benefits. So we're dealing with the others with about 8% of things to do that we're trying to manage and prioritize, and then looking at where we need to be to have a budget that can pass. We prioritize some of the things. So our proposed budget and actually what we requested in our proposed budget, you're seeing some differences. We can get back to you on some of those things that are sublines on the overall lines of where we've had those reductions. I would ask Dave to do that. But there's some things that I just wanted to let you know that we're almost even where we were last year, but our requested budget, because of the salary raises and everything else, we were looking for additional things that we're going to put off for the next year. We had to prioritize that.
Thank you, Chief. The police department's budget on the personnel schedule is difficult to understand because of those negative figures and the way that the accounting works on it. So it's it's not as straightforward as the other departments in city government. It is extremely confusing to try to understand. Broadly speaking, your staffing funding has remained the same. But as you pointed out with these significant raises, if we've got higher pay and the same amount of money, I'm assuming that we've reduced the force or the number of officers we're funding. How is that not, I could be misunderstanding, this is very complicated.
Our budgeted strength has not changed. The amount of officers has gone down.
Say that again.
Our budgeted strength for the amount of commissioned police officers has remained the same.
In a financial sense, has
Yes.
the number of commissioned officers budgeted changed?
No, the amount of officers has changed. The budgeted amount has remained the same
Yes.
year to year. With our hope to getting back up to budgeted strength through the recruiting processes. And then there's things that happen with that money where we had these officers budgeted. We actually are able to use some of that money with that gap to have additional overtime to make up for some of the gaps that we might have by not being at budgeted strength, to use in the communities, to strategically use to reduce crime in all parts of the city.
So what I'm looking at is 1,659 proposed staff members for the police department. In the what I'm trying to understand, I'm sorry, Chief, you have 911 commissioned officers and trainees out of a total staff, what was last year at 1,800. I'm trying to understand if your budgeted staffing numbers has changed and where that's happened. It's hard for me to understand how the number of staff members has not changed, nor has the budget to their salaries changed, but the salary has increased. Those three facts don't marry well together in my mind. If you're saying that, so that the budget for staffing has remained constant, correct?
Yes.
Okay. If the budget has remained constant and the number of officers has also remained constant, but the salary has significantly increased, how do all three of those facts marry together without?
Okay.
What am I missing? Does that make sense? What am I missing?
We're in contract negotiations, so the salaries have not changed at this time. So some of these raises that were proposed are going to go into fiscal 2025, right? Yeah. That's what we're looking for.
But even health insurance would go up, right? There's a little bit. Is that all part of negotiations? So if you negotiate, if we approve your budget and you have a projected staffing cost of, where are we at? $103 million for staffing, and you negotiate higher wages, where is the additional funding going to come for those raises?
Okay, so just to make sure we're on the same page, if you look at the handout I gave you, and so if you look at the second line from the top on police salaries, okay, so from all the sources of funding, it's 81.2 million. And last year it was 85. And as I was trying to explain, the reason that number went down, okay, is if you go and look at the attrition number, and I get it, this is why the police budget, part of the reason the police budget is so confusing, because there's so many negative numbers in that salary table. There's not a lot I can do about that. But I raised the attrition number to reflect what our staffing level was likely to be in the coming year. The biggest problem, Chairman, is that we prepared this budget kind of in the blind, because ideally what you really should do is you should know what you're going to be paying people.
Yes.
Right? But for many years, the salary negotiations break down, don't happen, whatever. I'm not really part of that. But so we go into the budget, we have the existing pay schedule, except what we don't know is, hey, what are we really ultimately going to pay these people? Because since salaries, and salaries also influence how much the benefits cost, since salaries are such a large part of our budget, we construct the budget using essentially old information, right? And not knowing what effect any potential salary is going to have. If you told me in advance that, hey, all the commission people, and I'm just using a number, this is not a promise to anyone, right? But let's say we increase all the commission salaries $15,000, right? Well, then the budget that you would see would look different because that might influence our staffing, right?
Right, so when do the budget, when do the negotiations, those take place on an annual basis?
Okay, so normally the wage reopeners are supposed to start in October, September, October, somewhere along that line. I think there was only one meeting.
In October?
And somewhere around that time. I don't know the specific date.
And the negotiations occur between
so the negotiations are between the the department personnel, the union, and then they include management staff from the police department. And at that point, the union presents a list of demands or requests. And at some point, the city responds. But typically, what happens is they wait until, let's say, the budget director tells them, oh, here's how much you can give, right? Here's how much money you have to work with. But I think Paul, and I'm just expressing my own opinion here, not the opinion of the police department. But I think we put Paul Payne in a very unenviable position because we ask him to literally do the impossible, which is say, oh, here's how much money you have to give to the police, which also means here's how much money you have to give to the fire, without him knowing, hey, how does this influence what level of staffing that you actually have, right?
Because you have a set amount of money.
You
don't know what the salary is. You divide it by the salary and you get the staffing number.
Right. And so because we start off this budget process, I figure, for the commission, for example, I figure with the existing pay matrix, and if they got their step during the year, which they normally do, what would that cost? And then I also budget for all the vacancies. Okay, just so that we account for everything. I budget for all the vacancies, but then in addition, I look at, well, what's likely to be the actual staffing level during the year, given trends and everything. But I do that in the dark because I don't know what they're going to actually get paid, right?
So those contract negotiations between the labor union,
yes,
the police department leadership, personnel department, start in October. When do they typically resolve?
Too late for me to incorporate the effect into the budget normally.
So we don't know what the negotiated contract is going to look like, what our police department's going to be paid.
No.
How are we supposed to approve a budget for the salaries of folks we don't know what their salaries are? It's crazy. You're in an unenviable position because this is not your responsibility. Your role is not negotiating these salaries. Your role is to develop this budget.
Correct.
Okay. historically, what can we do? When do we expect to know, when do we expect resolution on those contracts?
I don't know.
When did the current contracts end?
So normally they do, I think they do them just for 1 year. And, you know, as part of the contract, there's supposed to be a wage okay, so the ideal process is there's a wage reopener in October. They iron out what they're going to pay to them, what the pay matrix is going to be. And then someone like me plugs that into a pay matrix, figures out what the pay is going to be for all the people who are currently working, right? And then figure out what the rate of pay will be for those positions that are vacant, right? And then figure out, okay, given how we're doing on attrition and staffing levels, what is a good number to plug in for a negative as far as like what positions, what salaries what salary money we're not going to need.
So in other words, it opens in October and we're still in May in negotiations. Is that, and then we don't have a resolution for what the salaries are going to be. And so if we approve this budget with last year's salaries, and presumably next year's salaries are going to be different, there's going to be a discrepancy that we're going to have to figure out how to meet that negotiated salary rate.
Right. So I want to make sure that I'm not misspeaking, right? Because as far as I am aware, nothing has happened.
This is Alderman Aldridge.
I know, Alderman. I think I don't know where the negotiations are. No one has told me that they're close to being settled or what is happening with them.
Well, I mean, this sounds like pure insanity. Ryan, could we put in a request to the Director of Personnel to better understand where we are in these negotiations? We are under we have a fiscal duty, a responsibility, and it's under our charter. We have a sworn duty to pass a fiscally responsible, a balanced budget. And if we're passing a budget that does not include salary increases, by definition, that can't be balanced, and we would be going against our charter. So I want to be mindful of that. Ryan, do you mind reaching out to the Director of Personnel to understand where those negotiations are? And we may need to, I just want to make sure that, what I want to make sure that we're doing is funding a police department that can staff the way we need to staff. I think, you know, I understand that crime rates are down, and I want to commend our city on that. But, you know, when we have gun violence, when we have acts of, you know, we have people driving like with complete disregard for the safety and well-being of our community, there are acts of violence taking place in our city on a daily basis, and we need to make sure that we have a fully funded and fully staffed police department who can respond to those very violent situations. And so I just want to make sure that we're doing this in a way that doesn't catch us off guard, and we're fully funding you all. I also, is kind of going through those pieces, you know, with the line items on the sort of camera supplies and the shirts. I just want to make sure that we're addressing those gaps that are causing issues with morale within the police department. You know, I've personally heard having shirts and having that equipment is imperative to the health and well-being of our officers. And so if we're cutting that, I just want to be very clear that's a decision we're making, but you know, it is important, especially for new recruits and new officers who you know, are taking a leap of faith and joining our police department, that they have the things they need to be successful and to feel appreciated by their employer.
And Chairman Spencer, that's why it's so important to know what the pay matrix is going to be, because all the other things in the budget really are able to be afforded or not afforded, right, based upon what we're paying in salary and benefits. And so to be able to intelligently tell you, oh, this is exactly what we're going to do, I have to know what the new pay matrix is going to be, or if it's going to stay the same. I don't know.
Well, we appreciate your frankness. I mean, this, again, I think it is imperative that we know what those numbers are, so that we can pay people, but we, you know, with a budget for it. So let's just kind of, in order to get through this hearing, we have a staffing number, the number of staffs, the 1,600, et cetera, is equal essentially to last year's budgeted staffing amount, correct? So we're not decreasing the police force with this proposed budget.
No.
It's staying the same.
We are staying the same in terms of the budgeted number of positions.
Okay.
Right. But what this budget currently is showing you is that given the existing matrix and our actual, and because I'm forecasting our attrition will be higher, bless you, that the number of positions that need to be funded is going to be lower than last year because we have fewer people, and I'm trying to be realistic. Our budgeted salary total went down, but that's only because of the fact that I increased that negative attrition number. And just, can I jump on a little tangent? Because I know that it's frustrating for you and anybody else who looks at these documents. So all of these negatives that you see on 321, page 321?
321.
Yes.
Yes, the negatives we see.
Yeah. So
these are projected shortfall, holes in staffing. Is that right?
what? No, only one of them is.
Okay.
Okay, so the attrition number is what you would call the holes in staffing. The rest of them, let me give you an example. So
The salary adjustment fund, for
yeah,
example.
so look at your public safety sales tax. It's a negative 12,266,121.
Okay, that is the salary adjustment fund.
Yes, it's salary adjustment fund 1120.
One of the two salary adjustment funds.
There's
Or
plenty.
there's several, actually.
It's the last one. It's the last negative number in there.
Okay.
Okay, it's Fund 1121, which is the public safety sales tax, otherwise known as Prop P, right? Okay, so you see a negative 12,266,121. If you look at the document I handed out to you on the maybe fourth to last column, you'll see a figure of 12,266,121. It's first, no.
The public safety sales tax too?
Yes.
Okay.
You'll see that that's,
That's our overtime?
it's got a salary of, okay, the number matches. So you got a negative number in the general fund of negative 12,266,121.
Oh,
And then in the document that I gave you, there's a figure of 12,266,226,
in one document, it's a positive figure, and the other document's a negative figure.
That's, okay, yes, okay. So essentially, those other funds are being used to offset the request in the general fund. That's why you see those negatives.
The public safety sales tax 2 fund is used to offset the salaries requested from the general fund.
Yes.
I majored in math in college and my head is spinning. I don't know how anybody does this. It's very confusing. How anybody from the public could kind of parse through this. I'm glad we're going through this, but it's extremely, extremely confusing. The public safety sales tax 2 fund, where's the public safety sales tax 1 fund?
They're just using the common names that they get called.
Okay, so this was the sales tax we passed in 2019?
Yeah, it's the last sales tax you passed.
Okay. That half cent sales tax, I believe, 60% of which was to go to public transit. I thought the police department.
Essentially, so that sales tax funded, I believe, a $6,000 raise across the board for all the commissioned.
Okay.
But that's why you see those negative numbers, because it's really practically the only way to do this unless let's say the budget division just did a transfer into the general fund from those, move that money into the general fund and then allocated it. That would be one way that would be maybe less confusing, but there's really no other good way to do this besides artificially trying to stuff a number of positions into, let's say, the public safety sales tax too, but that's not what it was. It wasn't meant to fund an individual position. It was just meant to fund an increase in salary. And I believe, if memory serves me correct, that for your actual audit, right, that the auditors move all these, I think they move these sales taxes to the general fund for reporting purposes. But we get these allocations. We have an allocation for the general fund and for all these other funds, and they're used to offset the salary requests for the general fund. And I'm sorry it's complicated, but that's how we have to do it.
Okay. I'll turn it over to the committee for some questions. Broadly speaking, Chief, are we missing things from the budget that you feel we really need to function optimally? Again, I was kind of talking about some of those things. I mean, these are anecdotes from rank and file who've pointed out over the years, I mentioned the shirts, et cetera. I just want to make sure that we're adequately supplying our officers, especially the new ones, in a way that keeps them on board and working for the city.
Yeah, anytime, we speak with the Police Officers Association, the leadership, and also Ethical Society of Policing. We meet on a management labor meetings. Anytime these things come up, they do call my office, and if there is an issue that you talked about with shirts, we resolve them very quickly. So we have to have constant communication with officers, even if they're in the union, whether it's one of the unions or representatives. We make sure that we take care of them, and if it's something that happens to be shirts, that issue might have been where there was a delay in delivery. I remember an incident where they had to wear their own clothes and a suit for a few days. Once the delivery came in, we were able to rectify that situation. And anytime those things, we are taking a look at how we issue uniforms, what type of uniforms. We're creating a uniform committee shortly to take a look at and get concerns from the rank and file and see if we can better supply or make any improvements if needed.
Okay, does this budget, is just a few things that jumped out at me again, was a requested budget for body camera supplies of $60,000, zero of which is proposed. The health and safety equipment, the request was $2 million. The proposed value, or the proposed amount in that fund is $600,000. These two are jumping out at me. I just want to make sure, if there's.
One of the things when we take a look at the budget, and I sit down with our fiscal manager, sit down with Monet Cintron, sit down with the administration, sit down with Paul Payne, as we go over these things, we want to make sure that we prioritize and the things that were needed, how some of these line items are showing up right now. I'm satisfied that when it comes to the things that we really need, there's other things I know we have to get done, but where do we prioritize to come in with a budget that actually can pass? When it comes to body-worn cameras, it comes to ShotSpotter, it comes to cameras, it comes to all the other technology that we have. I believe a lot of this, where what we asked to fix this year, David hit on the old tower. That's a big cost to bring down. Can we wait on it? Yes, but we did put a request in. And there's some IT things. IT, we know if we don't stay up on that. Can we wait a year? We're trying to get things done. We put the request in this year.
Okay.
As you itemize them, these are broad. There's broad numbers here, but there's more information behind those numbers. And some of those reductions that we look at, I can get back through our fiscal manager, get back to this committee on any type of specifics of where they are. But when I look at what we need at this time, when it comes to cars, vehicles, equipment, we prioritize that because we're in a competitive world about how we bring police officers in. We got to make sure that our officers are taken care of. We got to make sure they got the best equipment out there to be competitive, to retain officers, to recruit officers. And those are the things that I look at as well, being in this profession for the years that I've been here. So the other things that can wait, I'd rather try to take care of them now. You put the requests in, can we get them through? And as we go through any budget, we're gonna try to maybe ask for everything and see what we can cut out when it comes back to where we have to be in a place that is fiscally responsible to the citizens and coming before this board.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Lastly, on the Sky camera, Sky Cop, are those in? I couldn't find those in the budget. Where are we with those? How many do we have citywide? And does this budget contemplate any new Sky cameras? I know they've been very helpful in kind of addressing short-term needs. High levels of violence in a small geographical area, and I've been grateful to be able to have some of those deploy. And
what we're going to do, part of the executive order, I have a mandate, which is something I agreed to from the beginning, and Alderman Velasquez can speak to this as well, is that being transparent about the technology that we have out there and making sure that sometimes we can alleviate some people's concerns by having that transparency, both written and then also giving a presentation before the Public Safety Committee. We did put the executive order out, and it does outline, this went out on Tuesday, it does outline where all our technology is in the funding, and I can read right off to the page and make sure it's introduced to the committee. But when it comes to the operation of the mobile camera trailers, we have funding sources of about $240,520. I agree with you. They are absolutely critical to make sure that they're a force multiplier where people are requesting them in areas, and they've helped us out, and they also can be put in areas where we've had issues and or to prevent some issues. And if something has happened, they have helped us for evidentiary videos that help us solve crimes. And so I'm not exactly, the number that we have right now, I have them right here. We have 30 of them at this point, and we also get funding from outside sources that actually help us with these through a police foundation, through other sources, through grants that we use in technology. So the mobile cameras, we have 30 right now, spread out between the patrol areas and districts.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful. I'm going to turn it over to Vice Chair Pam Boyd. Believe she's remote. Alderwoman Boyd. I'm going to turn over the questions to you, but also I unfortunately have to step out, so I'm going to turn over the committee to Chief. Really appreciate you being here. Thank you again for accommodating. I appreciate your staff being here. You know, we appreciate your service to the city. We do recognize your force is down, and you know we're grateful for the folks that are serving in uniform in our city.
Thank you, Chairwoman.
Okay, thank you, Chief, for being here. I guess after hearing this report, I really don't see how we can move forward on anything in regards to the budget, because you all don't even know what's been approved or not approved. And all I kept thinking about is when we had to go back the last time and we had to revisit the upper management that didn't get their raise because we weren't in order, and that those people weren't able to get their raises. And so we had to backtrack to get them on board. So I just think it's a bad situation to put us in, because it's neither here or there that we can talk about the budget in regards to the police department. But I want to make sure that everybody understands those cameras, those roaming cameras, are becoming the shell cars we used to have years ago. And I keep telling people, you don't have the manpower, you don't have the people that can be down at the Real Crime Center to monitor those cameras in all the areas that they're at. And so if you don't have a plan in place to make sure that you have some kind of visible patrol to let people know that somebody is watching, it's not going to change. We're going to keep spinning our wheels. So I appreciate you all trying to look at ways to improve it. And technology is what technology is. But we can't keep continuously to keep looking at cameras to fix everything. It's not going to work. And so we have to have the manpower to be able to not only do the IT, but to manage the cameras, but to manage the communities to ensure that the services are there. So I appreciate you and your staff for coming in, trying to present to us what you can with what you have. But I just feel as a whole, until we have the actual numbers in place, we can't really say one way or the other, because as the young man that was speaking for you in regards to the numbers, we're kind of in a sticky situation, so we don't know which way to go. So thank you very much, and I apologize because you're really in a sticky situation.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair.
You're welcome. So I'll let Alderman Oldenburg go next.
Thank you, Vice Chair Boyd, Chief Bonet, Dave, and others. Thanks for being here today. Just a couple of questions I do have. We have seen some favorable reductions in violent crime. Congratulations on that. I think we'd all admit, yourself included, that there's still some work to be done, but does this budget also allow you to continue to implement those strategies to further reduce and support the downward trend in violent crime?
Absolutely, Alderman. I think technology is great. and I agree, Madam Vice Chair, we can't solely rely on technology. It's a force multiplier and an overall comprehensive strategy, and we leverage it. And even if we were up at full strength, budgeted full strength, we would still be leveraging this technology because it's very good, and used in the right way, it can help get some of the reductions that we've seen. I'm very proud of the men and women, both commissioned and civilian, of this police department, because all police departments are down. And I celebrate the ones that have stayed and the ones that are coming in. Sometimes we talk about the ones that leave and not getting police officers. Let's celebrate the ones that are here. My hat's off to them. I'm so proud of them to be able to get the reductions that we were able to get last year. And I think a lot of it was very good police work, work in efficiency, using strategies and a comprehensive plan, and rolling in some of this technology. We have not cut any of that technology out, and that's why I've made sure that those are the things that are priority leveraged. And at the same time, you know, we have recruitment campaigns. We've changed. We've had additional money go into how we're recruiting, where we're sending our officers. We're starting to see a different hiring process that was put in with a new program that we're taking more charge with the oversight of Department of Personnel. We're seeing more applicants coming in. But as we know in policing, it takes 18 months to put police officers on the street. And then what I'm very proud of, that with the raise, we're competitive last year. We have an economic reopen that we're talking about earlier, where sometimes we can't predict where we're going to be in 2025 for those raises, should there be raises. And at the same time, 22 officers that left the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department have come back. So we're starting to get people to come back. It's going to take time. It's a crisis throughout the United States, but I actually see attrition slowing down where it was happening at such a fast rate for the last 3 years, from 2020, 21, and 22. 23, it slowed down, but we're still losing bodies to attrition, but it's slowed down. Hopefully we can turn that corner with a lot of things that were put in place. But the technology, sir, that you asked about, when there are cuts, those are some of the things that you know, I ask for, and make sure that we prioritize, that we can still get the safety out there, especially with the technology that we need. And even when we had the surveillance bill, there was some things that, you know, we went back and forth with an executive order, and also one of the ordinances, to make sure that it was transparent, people knew it was happening, we have oversight on it, but make sure that we're using it to protect our public, make sure we're using it the proper way and not violating people's civil liberties.
I appreciate that, Chief, and also you also answered kind of my next question around recruitment. So I appreciate that as well, that that you are doubling your efforts on not only retaining but recruiting more officers, and we know that obviously correlates to a direct impact on.
Yeah. And sir, if you see some of the billboards that are out there, we have 10 billboards, digital billboards throughout the region now, trying to bring that in. We're investing more in the Explorers. We're investing more in the Cadet Corps program. We're looking for tuition reimbursement. We're working with Harris Stowe for a urban youth academy, where we're bringing kids and introducing them into our profession, building and trying to build the trust and trying to get to them when they're younger, and especially with the Explorer program. So all these things are going to take time that we can manifest into getting them into the pipeline, should they want to be a police officer, and through the vetting process, they're the candidate that can be the right police officer.
Thank you. You mentioned transparency and the surveillance executive order and the recent legislation. I certainly want to commend you and the mayor's office actually on this as well, of releasing a historic surveillance technology oversight report that was just recently released. I haven't thumbed through it all, but is there anything you can maybe highlight in that report that went into it for either the community or the aldermen on this committee?
Well, it was definitely from the executive order, and also having the administration understand that, working together with the police department. I also want to thank members of the Board of Alders and some of the people that are in front of me right now that have all worked on this bill to come to a place where I think there was a consensus that it protected the use of it, but it also protected to make sure that we were using it in a proper way and we're being transparent without jeopardizing the use of the tool or preventing us from using it, but make sure we're not violating people's civil liberties. And this report is one of the things that came out through the executive order. And then in the near future, we've already talked to the chair of the Public Safety Committee, Alderman Brett Narayan, and we're going to schedule the presentation that we'll be giving on this public safety report, and then also any question that should be asked as mandated by the executive order and the ordinance, which I'm happy to do because that was one of the things I said we should be talking about this, and I'll be happy to speak to that through the budget and/or to a presentation to Public Safety Committee.
Thank you, Chief. My last question is just more of a statement, but somewhat I would like you to speak to it. Is we often hear around community engagement and how important it is to engage the community when policing. I've certainly noticed your personal presence as well as many of your officers and watch commanders showing up at neighborhood association meetings, showing up at various business associations and other organized ward groups and neighborhood groups that exist. So I certainly want to thank you and commend you for that. Do you see that continuing to move forward? Because I do think that's an important interplay, and I think you would agree, between the community and the police to stay in constant communication.
Yeah, that's just as important as the strategy we have in place. If we're not working with the community, meeting with the community, we can have some success, but never long-term sustainable success. Having these things, that was the number one thing coming in where I've done this in other police departments, that we will be at each and every meeting. And I'm not sure what's going on here, but there's been a disruption with all police departments, all businesses because of the pandemic. And then we had some civil arrests after the George Floyd murder. So we've kind of been allowed to meet only because we're handling a lot of things and doing things other than just normal policing, and we couldn't get together personally. Zoom is great. It was a great substitute at the time, but it can't substitute us being present in front of people, having that human connection. I'm seeing Alderman Aldridge. I'll be at your town hall next Saturday, right? This Saturday. Oh, I would have missed it. No, I'm kidding you. So I will be at that, and that is going to continue. The short answer is yes. It is too important not to do that because in a lot of police departments, we have a community liaison where it's one person goes out and speaks for the 100 cops that are in the district and through the commanders. And you know what? Everybody's a community police officer, starting with your chief. And I have to set the tone to be at these meetings. And when I can't be to these civic associations that are in the dozens and dozens, I expect them to be at them. And also making sure my rank and file and the officers that are answering calls for service, because they're the ones that are going to be responding. And when they see the issues that the community is having, they feel the connection. They'll do that extra directed patrol. They'll have that connection. You're hearing it. It's not from the chief, not from the commander. I need you on this corner for this issue. They'll see it's coming from the community, and we're working together. And that starts to build that trust. And we have a long way to go. We got to sustain it. And I think it's something we need to do each and every day, sir.
Great. Thanks, Chief. I have nothing further. Chief, appreciate your service and all those in the police department as well. So stay safe and keep up the good work.
Thank you, Alderman.
Okay, you all kind of have to help me because I don't know who is out there. So is it,
I'm next.
Velasquez.
okay, so Alderwoman, you
Yes,
next.
it's me, Alderwoman Sunier, and then Alderman Aldrich.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Thank you, Police Chief Tracy, for being here, and Monet and staff, and I see folks from the mayor's office. So I guess I just kind of want to back up because I think we got a little bit bogged in some details. I just want to say I think budgets are always, an anticipation, approximation of what's to come. So I'd be curious to how we handled this process before, because I feel like it's always budget and negotiation. But I hear that things are, they're imperfect because that's why you have action, said from the not accounting science person. But I just wanted to just go through a couple things. I know, Chief Tracy, you're going to talk about a line item budget when you present to public safety that's going to include the grant funding as well, which isn't included in this budget. And it looked like grant funding overall was down 24% for this year. And it also looks like, if I have my notes right, that 24 positions, and I'm asking about the grant funded positions, if you could just talk briefly, maybe if it's possible, what kinds of positions those were that won't be funded this year through grants?
So we had the department's authorized unit strength was proposed at 1246, including 55 trainee positions, is a decline of 24 positions, resulting in expiring grant-funded positions. So this would be commissioned police officers, as I understand it. And right now, we're well below our budgeted strength. So that grant, I'll have to review what happened to that grant. Was it a sunshine expiration? I mean, a sunset expiration, my apologies. Expiration on this grant, but I would need to get back to you through the chair if to make sure that I don't want to speculate, but I see exactly where it's coming from. But I want to make sure I give you the accurate answer.
Yeah, and I think if presenting this, and even when you present to public safety, I know you all said this is not the grant budget, and I just asked a question about the grants, but just in the conversation about staffing, I think it just stood out to me. I also noticed, if I read the budget right, that there's not a budget for an assistant police chief. Did I read that? There's not a line item budget. There's not a.
There's a line item for, I'm sorry, who?
Assistant police chief, and it doesn't look like that number was budgeted in the personnel?
No, that wasn't budgeted. Right now, we have 4 lieutenant colonels. It depends. Some years they have them, some they don't. I don't foresee having that position. We have 4 lieutenant colonels right now. I think you do reorg a police department as the managerial rights that I can do. Right now, I think keeping it at 4 lieutenant colonels is where we need to stay right now. And that's not to say that I wouldn't come back next year. And what I would really do is I can actually pull that up from taking 2 police officer positions that would cover that salary, because we have that wiggle room. That's something I can come back and propose.
Okay, I was just curious. And I look forward, I thank you for your ongoing collaboration and cooperation in regard to the technology and the technology budget. So I'm really looking forward to that presentation in public safety where we can see everything. And I will also completely read the technology report that you all sent over. So with that, I have no more questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Alderwoman.
you.
Okay, next we have Alderwoman Saulnier.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. First, I'm going to do the same thing. Thank you all for being here, present with us. I obviously know you guys have a high load, and then I will also echo the sentiments of the community presence. I like to joke with the chief sometimes and be like, "Are you going to be in my hood today?" And oftentimes he is at the neighborhood meeting. And I feel like you do a good job, especially in my community. I have constituents that ask the questions, as you know, that's why I do. And you handle them well, you give them a good response, and you actually came, I think we either were on the brink of figuring out the CCOPS thing or had figured out, but maybe we were at the tail end and you were still like a great sport. You took their questions, and I was just glad that we were able to show the community, even though we're having this policy conversation, there's no disrespect and there's no bad blood because we share the same mutual interests. And also, while I'm on record, I know there's been some movement, and I love the recent movement. Captain Angela Dickerson, I love her down. She is so excellent. She's so responsive to constituents. She works really hard to manage, the staff that she does have and move things around. And I feel like I've learned so much more about this is who does the traffic folks, and this is the connection to the park rangers, and comes to all the neighborhood meetings. She's just excellent, and I just wanted to uplift her and Officer Rojas, because they're both new to the district, and they've just done a great job. And so I don't know what you all are doing, but whatever you're doing when you're picking your front-facing officers, I think is going well. And I'm especially happy that those are women of color. Officer Rojas has been Park West, and she can speak Spanish, and actually held a meeting for business owners in Spanish to explain to them public safety tips. Captain Angela Dickerson will lean into the fact that she's African American and she understands the distrust that exists. And so I just want to commend you and commend Monet, Chief Monet, and everyone for just doing a good job for the election.
Thank you, Alderman.
Okay, so I do have some questions. My first one is just very general. Right now, in terms of recruitment and retention, what would you say is your biggest challenge?
Making sure we can get people to understand how much of a noble profession this is, how you come into a life of service to help people that need it the most. And I think, there's been different factions out there, and sometimes a negative narrative, some earned, some not earned. And so we have to start rebuilding trust. We have to make sure that getting out into these communities, they love it. I'm telling you, the feedback of going to all these community meetings, even our officers who weren't able to do it for years because of the disruptions, they enjoy going to the community meetings. They all want to be there. And then I think with a lot of them, because we've been separated because of circumstances beyond our control, realizing how much the community wants them, needs them, and cares about them. And I think there's perceptions on both sides, and we're overcoming those things. That's why I talk about it opportunity. And I think as we're coming out of these unprecedented times, I think we're starting to see, we're still losing to attrition, but you have to have a plan in place on how you're going to attract these police officers. And I already talked about all the youth programs, the PAL. I was just at a fundraiser with they're going to start, first they have baseball leagues. I have about 18 police officers on their own time coaching kids throughout this community in the PAL. That's building relationship with parents and kids to see us in different light. We have to constantly be able to recruit. And I think as morale goes up, pay was going up, officers are coming back to this organization. The best recruiters of any organization, I don't care whether it's private or public, are the people that work in the organization, because they're going to tell people and they're going to advertise us for us, billboards. So I think for recruitment, retention, we also have to streamline the process. We have to make sure that the archaic process that we've had in place with hiring, where we used to have, we could take our time because there was lists of people. Now, we don't have a list. We exhausted immediately. We changed our business model where we're calling officers as they apply, or future officers, applicants. We call them almost the same day. Once they show up on their application, we capture them because they're going to apply to 6 or 7 different police departments. And whoever's capturing them is going to have a heads up. We bring them in, but a lot of them want to become St. Louis Metropolitan Police officers. Hiring process, it's huge. HR, I commend Director Sonia Gray and her team of what they're doing, and then allowing our team to take the lead in this and then have the oversight for the approval process. Those are dynamic changes I think are going to help us in the future to make sure that we don't lose candidates to other jurisdictions. And then, as I talked about, it's not by accident people are coming back. 22 officers have come back, and I've sworn them back in. That's twice the size of the last 2 academy classes. Those are the officers that could put right back on the street after about 3 weeks of reacclimation training, although they're police officers in other jurisdictions. We trained them. They came from our police department. And then what we did is we also opened up something we didn't do to make sure that we could take lateral transfers. We do a little bit of a longer, shortened academy. And if they come from other jurisdictions, we'll take their seniority time. So we're making ourselves competitive where it was always a one-way street. So other jurisdictions were taking our officers. Now, if they train them, if suitable, other officers are coming our direction. And we already have one already, and we have another one in the pipeline. One's coming from St. Peter's, another one's coming from, so they're coming to our department, and that's not by accident. That means they're talking morale, we're competitive with pay, but it's going to take time to really turn the corner. And, you know, a lot of police departments are suffering from this, but I see a bright future to try to get it back up to where we need in our budgeted strength.
Thank you. So I do this thing where I have office hours every month, 1.5 in the morning, 1.5 in the evening.
Mm-hmm.
And something that's really cool that happened in the office hours I had last month is some officers actually came and they were like, you know, I actually am your constituent. I am an officer, but I'm your constituent. And we were able to have some conversations. And okay, so to me, what has come up when I'm talking to officers on the ground is I think we kind of got at it a little bit when we did the historic raises last year with the 8 to 13%, but a lot of them have indicated that we're still not competitive, just in terms of even other municipalities. If you take a look at the starting salary that you could get, if you know, even if you look at the rate of where officers are going, they're going to Richmond Heights, county places. Our starting pay is still not, and I'm saying starting pay, but I've also talked to some of them who served for a while and have talked about the matrix that we have and how it's very different. Like in the city, we have a 15-step, we have a 30-step matrix. In the county, they have a 15-step matrix. And even thinking about an officer having a 30-step matrix that takes about 30 years to climb, when an average career in the military and police 20 to 25 years, which I think is well earned. I would not combat that at all. But I'm just curious. To me, this budget, what I feel is happening is in our community, a lot of times people are starting to get an answer when they call 911, but it still is taking a while for them to come. There's times where I've had incidents where constituents have to call me and let me know what's going on, and then I reach out and the department is always responsive and trying to get them. But a lot of times what I find out when I reach out is, well, if I have 2 cars, but I have 3 officers, and I'm getting calls that take more presence, I really can only operate with the 2 because I have 1. So I'm just highlighting all of these instances to say that I'm really concerned with this budget, and I'm really not pleased with it. And this is no shade to you, but I just don't see, like, I mean, education, all these different things. The thing that I see that works to help address some of the bleeding that is happening, that's unsafe for the officers themselves, that's unsafe for the communities who need the service, is becoming competitive in the pay. And this, we are not competitive in the pay. There are still places where you could go over to the next municipality and make another $10,000, $15,000 just by skipping over. And I don't really see that addressed in the budget. And I think what that does is that creates this secondary policing system that I don't really like the idea of, because instead of fixing the public system that everybody's tax dollars should be entitled to, officers got to go work secondary to make up for the difference in pay. And then constituents and special business districts, people like that, have to start using additional tax dollars for a service. So I know that was a bit much, but I guess what I'm trying to say is just explain the context of why this is an alarming budget to me, and talk about, like, have there been conversations about adjusting the matrix systems? Are we talking about, 8 to 13% is excellent. And I do think that the administration is going in the right direction with that, but I still think we're far away from being where we need to go. And I don't see anything in this budget that would stop us out from bleeding, that would stop an officer. If I got to work a job and here I'm going to get 40 shifts per call and I'm making $50,000 less than I could here, if I go over there, I'm going to get another $15,000. I'll have less cost per shift. I'll always have a part. We're just not competitive. And so I'm just wondering, throughout your budgeting process, have these conversations been had? Have these things been looked at? Are there ongoing conversations? Because I'll be honest, I don't think this budget is we're going to keep bleeding out. And I'm really concerned about that for both the community and the officers themselves.
Yes, all those points, great points. And coming in with outside eyes, where I've worked for 3 other police departments, have been involved in negotiations. It was very promising. Our last raise and our negotiation recognized by the administration and the union coming together with an historic raise. That was a start. That's a start. Also, when it comes to parity, when it comes to this city's a little different than other cities. Police officers are usually paid the most because I love firemen. I have family members that are firemen and other jobs, but in other cities, police officers are paid more because the also responsibility of having to carry a firearm and the type of work they do. I would never go into a burden building. I respect firemen immensely, but it's a little bit of a different job, and that's why other cities recognize it. Here, there's well over 600 firemen that whatever the police get, there's parity pay, and I think the administration has to take a look at that. Number one, and then having an economic reopener this year, I already know when you talk about some of these things, it's what the Police Officers Association needs to bring to the table to a collective bargaining agreement. So that is something that's going to be in the process as an economic reopener. That's done with operations, Department of Personnel, the offices, and I actually do sit at the table. I would love to see them, and one of my things is we need to stay competitive despite parity, because you're exactly right. Officers will leave and go to other jurisdictions for economics. We've closed the gap, but these other jurisdictions now, if we don't continue to have economic reopeners, they're going to make raises because they're going to stay competitive to try to continue to get police officers. So we have to keep that in mind. And those are the things that I want our officers to be paid, because, all these other jurisdictions, I've had so many officers that have left for economic reasons. They came back because of this raise because it was closer. But they took this job, especially in St. Louis, to help the people and help people in this city because they care about this city. When they went to other jurisdictions, a lot of them came back because of the hours that they got because they were new. They worked overnights, and in a week they get 1 call to service. They were bored out of their minds because they didn't feel they have a sense of purpose. What we do is give a sense of purpose, and a lot of them are coming back. We got to bottle that to continue to make sure people know how good they are, how much we care about them. And then as far as when it comes to these raises, absolutely, I think I would like for Paul Payne and others to speak to how we get there and how it gets put in the budget and how they forecast it. There are things that, because we're below budgeted strength right now, I use that money for a lot of other things to make up for less offices for overtime. And I'd have to let them talk to how they would incorporate the raises in FY25. They're a heck of a lot smarter on how they forecast. They do this every single year. But I'm with you, and that's why we're doing an economic reopener, to make sure our offices, we stay competitive, we can recruit and retain. And I'm on the same page with you because it's in my best interest to make sure our offices are taken care of, to make sure that they can take care of the community.
Okay, so I know that there's several paths to get into solving the problem. I know personnel and negotiations and all of that has to be there, but also in the budget in front of us. So I've made a little chart and looked at just the vacancy rates and could explain a little bit each year how it is increasing. But just to put us in a most recent example. So like most recently in the budget, we planned for, as far as on the ground officers, we planned for about 847 officer positions in the budget. But we only filled about 650 of those positions. So that leaves about 197 vacant. And I could walk us through each one. You know, if you've looked at the same thing for sergeants, you could look at the same thing. So what I'm wondering, right, and I know that for the city, this is radical stuff. But instead of having 197 vacant positions budgeted, have we had conversations about, even if you just cut it in half and you redistributed that money in salaries to the officers who are working? You know what I'm saying? Like, I think there's all of these larger, big picture personnel, but there might be money right here. We might need to revisit the realistic number of folks that we will have. And if what we know we need to do is become competitive, perhaps we get comfortable with the idea of we don't plan for so many, which again, they're vacant. So we wouldn't be cutting anything that exists or cutting anything field. And there's so many, we don't even have to necessarily cut all of them. But has the department looked into, or, you know, my colleagues should hear me on this too, have we talked about like redistributing some of that vacant salary money into the positions that you all have so they can become competitive? And so not only can we attract them, but we can sustain them, because I know a lot of them will come, get their training, do all of that, and then go elsewhere. Is that, and it might be hard for you to say, but how do you feel about that conversation? Because again, we got to take a vote on this budget. And I feel like if I had to vote on this with where it is, and go back to my officers and go back to my community, I don't feel like I've done everything that's within my power to help. I would be like, there's maybe an opportunity here, given all these vacancies, that we could increase the salaries and maybe then attract more and fill some of those positions. And I'll also note that the Department of Corrections, they did cut some vacancies. I don't think they were distributing salary, but they did cut some vacancies because they recognized the same thing. And the police department is not alone in that. Many departments in the city of St. Louis, like you said, across the country, people are understaffed since the pandemic. And I'm just wondering, maybe we need to be a bit more realistic about who we can get and what we need to do to get the folks we can get.
Yes, and when you're talking about gaining money, cutting down budget strength, putting extra money into the salary of the police officers, that has to be done through the collective bargaining agreement. And this is something through the Department of Personnel. This is something through operations. This is something that I know just with informal conversations that has been discussed. It's something that possibly with the economic reopener, bringing it to the table where and it has to be also an agreement, because you're talking about salaries. So this has to be negotiated through the collective bargaining agreement. So that has to be negotiated across the table. And if there's something that's in there, everything's on the table to try to make sure that we can try to continue to attract. I can't make promises where we're going to be, but it certainly is conversations we can have, and that has to be with the Police Officers Association. I know their representatives and their membership is willing to come to the table and talk about some of these things, how we can find a way to stay competitive or even get compensated even more than our competitors out there. So I can't get into great detail what I can and can't promise, but the conversations are being had.
So you're saying that the number of officer positions is something that has to be set as a part of the agreement with?
No, if you're looking to reduce officers for pay, that has to be negotiated. When I'm talking about anything with pay has to be negotiated through the collective bargaining agreement. So right now, that's something with an economic reopener. I'd rather stay at the budgeted strength, because then it gives us a goal to where we're going to be. And then even that money that's in between, the gap between who we have and who we don't, I'm able to use that money into different areas so I can efficiently run the city, put additional patrols, put overtime throughout the city, and then I can actually strategize with that additional money where there might be some holes in our schedule that I'm able to use that overtime that's in that area to be able to use to help run this police department to keep this city safe. I'd rather not get away from that, but if that's something that's on the table that everybody's talking about through a collective bargaining agreement, I'm also open to it. You asked my opinion where I'd rather be, but I'm also, I'm very flexible. We've had plenty of negotiations and we've had talks about some things that we've come to a consensus. So I wouldn't say I'm against it. I'll tell you where I'd rather be. I'd also would love to look at, and it has been, is about 11-hour schedule, which is more conducive to officer health and wellness. They get every other weekend off. They get a training day once a month and they train together, so you're not taking them off patrol. We find morale goes up in other police departments. I've been in police departments that have done it. I was skeptical in the beginning when I went to a police department, and I found out it was one of the best schedules in the United States. We have floated that out. We're letting the union and representatives for every rank talk about it we're having committees on it. And I'm not going to do anything that's going to cause anxiety or the police department doesn't want. I'm flexible enough to find ways to make sure that we can do things for our officers to make sure we can have them in the best position possible and to want to come to work, make sure we give them a good work schedule. But that work schedule actually is advantageous they have more time off, but we actually get more officers on the street right now as we're dealing with every police department's dealing is with a personnel crisis.
Understood. I guess for me, it's just hard because your department is one of the few that's kind of not directly, like that does have all these other processes. And this is my personal opinion. I want to hear more about some of the issues that I know officers are having. I want to see those addressed, and I want to see them addressed aggressively. I want us to be a competitive city. I want us to be a place that is of public safety. I want when my constituents call because of a burglary or a rape or an assault or whatever the case may be, I want, not only do I want an officer to come, I want that officer to come and have the most morale because they're being taken care of. And I just, you know, I think like anybody in leadership, whoever we can write to, whoever we can talk to, like, as long as we're not at least competitive with some of these neighboring municipalities, we're behind. I mean, I've even heard things about health insurance from officers of like, I start a family, it shoots up over $500. That's not the case in other places. You know, I really don't, for me, I don't want to be here and in 5 years, we're having the same conversations. I think that the problem is clear. I mean, it's capitalism. Most people pick a job, hopefully they like it, but hopefully they get paid well. And I just think that some of the changes that we're making, although we're taking steps in the right direction, they're not drastic enough. I don't know that, to me, they don't meet the level of need that I know exists in our community. I think if you go to any person in communities, one of their top concerns and interests is public safety. But if you can go to Clayton and make $71,000, or you can go to Kirkwood and make $80,000, it's not incentive and it's hard and it hurts people across the board. You know, I think I would love to talk about reimagining things, but I think we got to fix this public system, one that everybody has first, before I can even get to some of the ways that I would like criminal justice to be, you know, more holistic. So I will wrap up my question in there, but just want to leave you with like something that I really want to see. I hope you push for, like what you mentioned, and I know it's a bureaucratic process with a lot of red tape, but we got to do what we got to do to get closer, and that might mean we need to look at cutting some of the vacancies, which again is something I would say to most city departments. And also, the health insurance is a flag that a lot of officers who have families have kind of flagged to me as well, that when they have children, up over $300, $400, $500. And that's hard when you're already being underpaid, you're already being overworked. Now I have a kid, another mouth to feed, and I'm about to come out of pocket more.
Right, and the health benefits and everything, that's a citywide issue, not just a policing issue. So that's not just about SLMPD. And I'm with you on all that stuff. I didn't come here not to improve this police department, look out for the officers' welfare, make sure they got the best equipment, make sure that I'm supporting them as their leader, and also making sure that working with the community so we're all working together. I agree with you on a lot of things, but came into a crisis, trying to come out of it, and there is a sense of urgency as I work through those processes, but not to really prolong this. There are a lot of things that I mentioned earlier. And as far as going to other police departments, let's not forget, 22 officers have asked to come back, and they've come back from Clayton, Ladue, and all these other organizations. for a lot of other reasons, but those economics helped. And hopefully, this next round of negotiations, they'll get raised and we stay even more competitive. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think next is Alderman Aldridge.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair and members of the committee. I think they say the best for last. They do it every budget hearing. I'm always last, so it's okay. Thank you, Chief, for being here. I would be so remiss if I didn't thank your Chief of Staff, Ms. Monet. I forget your last name, sis, but it's okay. But Monet, who has Cintron, who has just been a great person to work with, has been a great partner to this board, has been very responsive when there's things going on, like there was a shooting in my ward this last Monday, or the other day, where a body was found in the morning. There was conversations of maybe when that body was there, community being upset, but she is constantly being helpful, responsive, and trying to make sure that resources are getting to the ground in the community. Was a huge support on the legislation with the oversight. I know we talk about the EO, which I think is transparency, which is great, but we needed that oversight component that comes with the board bill that was passed at the Board Alderman, which I know she has been working on that, and we will continue to work with her to make sure that those use plans get taken care of. So, I mean, I can go on and on about her and less about you, Chief, in the department, but I do appreciate.
You want me to bring her up here?
I mean, I know I can't even.
It'll go easier, Alderman.
I can't even see her right now. No, I feel like I need. Okay, yeah. And I also see you brought on. It looks like thank you for all your police officers for being here and staff. And I see a new member of the staff, Mitch. So welcome aboard. There is some good things that I have to say also, Chief. I do believe, you coming in, you are doing a very good job. I felt about you on the front end. It was like not my first pick, but I will say you have truly been doing a good job. I think we needed some outside eyes on the department. The department, as my opinion, has always been a department that has always been used to the culture and way that things work, because the chiefs have always been from St. Louis. To be able to have outside eyes on the department, I think, is helpful. I do think there is still always some more transparency that can be done, but I do think y'all are taking those steps to at least be more responsive, receptive in the community, and willing to hear the concerns of residents, especially being the kind of place where Ferguson happened that really changed, I think, policing and community and how we police in community. So I want to thank you at least for your leadership. The question that I do have is and I'm also, to be honest, I know I was in and out, I was listening. I'm kind of confused on the budget. I'm more confused this year than last year with, I guess, the documentation that y'all provided, which isn't like in the budget book. I hear there's negotiations going on, but last year process seemed to be a little bit more smoother than what is going on this year. So I don't know to start with on the numbers, but I will say, or I want to ask, are we in a place, I know the mayor talks about this and she talked about it in her state of the city about making sure we have social workers with our law enforcement. I know y'all have a tough duty to do, but social workers kind of carry a different perspective in being able to de-escalate, which sometimes it's hard to de-escalate when you maybe show up and people see people in uniform and they instantly go into rage. So has there been any start or conversations or any hires of social workers that will work hand in hand with law enforcement when certain situations are taking place?
Yeah, absolutely. Our offices are crisis intervention trained. We have offices that go through additional training, and we have cops and clinicians. Depending on the amount of clinicians that are hired, they actually do ride in cars with us and respond to calls where we call them CIT calls, critical incident training calls. And depending on the type of call, if it has a weapon or it's going to be violent, we have to make sure we protect the social worker that's with us, the clinician. If it's not, they will respond with us. And then with 911 now, we've created a situation through public safety, and Director Coyle can hit on a lot of things that, what the work that we've done with 911, EMS, and fire, but we've also created where we can divert calls to just clinicians and social workers where you don't have that response, that is not immediate response that law enforcement shouldn't be at, or doesn't have to respond. We can take that out of the queue so then we can answer all the other calls. But right now, as we're transitioning, we are a default that handles everything, which sometimes stretches us thin. But with that, I believe the calls, and I'll wait for Will Pickney, the Director of Office of Violence Prevention. I'm sure he'll be presenting. He can give you the exact numbers, but I know there's around 5,000 or 6,000 calls that we've had cops and clinicians that were able to handle and successfully handle those calls where it just would have been a police officer. But what I want to make sure that we do, all our officers are trained in crisis intervention training so they can pick up if someone has substance abuse, mental health issues, to make sure we can keep them safe and our officers safe when we show up to a scene, to be able to identify that. And where in the past, we weren't trained in that, because it will be a default. It's not a perfect system where you get 100% response to these calls. It's still going to be a police officer having to respond. And I want to make sure our officers are as trained as possible. And I think everybody would want that, because it could be a pickup call, officers riding in a car. You don't have time to call a mental health specialist if something's happening right in front of you, and we want to make sure that they're able to deal with those issues. So the answer is yes. We've already started that. We already have people assigned to it. We have dedicated police officers in districts that are assigned to it when they're not doing 24/7. I'll let Director Will Pickney get into the times and how they outsource this to clinicians to work with our police officers, and/or go out alone when not necessary to have an officer with them.
How many, I mean, from when you, I guess, presented the budget last year to now, how many, I guess, officers have we increased, and did we lose more than we increased from last year?
I think at this time last year, please, I'm going to talk estimates, approximates, because it's a dynamic number. You can look every day. I just swore 2 police officers in, 1 just retired, so the number jumps around every single day. We had 911. When I presented last year, I'm presenting right now. If I go back to year to date, we have 911 officers, including trainees right now. Last year at this time, I believe we were in the 900s. Where that number is, because it was May, I'm not going to go off January. I think we're a little over 1,000. Then it attrited down because I didn't have another academy class go into after this budget that was existing. And so what I'm talking about is we still attrited from that number, but it could have been about 60 to 70 less officers this year at the budget than last year, where when I look at some of these numbers year to year, we were losing hundreds of police officers. I mean, at some point, if you go back several years ago, we had over 1,400 police officers. Now we're down to less. We're slowing that down. 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023 started to slow it down. I'm almost 15 months in that 15-month period. I'm looking at a net loss of less than 100 in almost a year and a half period. So we're putting more academy classes in, and we're looking at, I talked about earlier with Alderwoman Velasquez, how we're recruiting, how we're bringing people in, how we change the hiring processes. And just right now, there's almost 24 to 30 in the process, and how many make it through the process. We're going to get another academy class in. We just put 24 in 2 weeks ago. We graduated 11 a month and a half ago. In July, we're going to graduate another 11, and then 22 have come in, and every week, every month, I have more and more people applying to come back to this police department. And then we vet them very well to make sure that there was no issues coming back, because I want to make sure that when we're bringing some back into the department, you and I and everybody, the public, I don't want to lose the public trust. Is there any issues with that officer coming back? And we do take most of them back, but we make sure we vet exactly what's the situation, why they want to come back, and why they leave the organization. So that's promising, but we're still in a bit of a crisis as far as making sure that we don't have those lists of 1,000 to 2,000 people waiting to get in. There is no list. And when people talk about, Chief, why don't you hire more police officers off the list? I have to explain that's why I love going to community meetings, because people have a perception that there's some list and we're refusing to hire people. That's just not the case. We exhaust those lists, and then we continue to recruit constantly. And then we get them into the process to get them ready to create another class as we get enough officers.
Do we, from a year from now to today, do we have more white shirts? I don't know like the proper term. I just know the cool kids with the white shirts. and the other ones were blue.
If you look at our budgeted strength, where I've looked at and filled the positions right now, it looks about the same. Actually, if you saw, I brought one less down when it came to lieutenant colonels and assistant chiefs, so we have 4. It's about the same. If you look at the budgeted strength of, I like to say, lieutenants, sergeants, and above, we're under that number because it's called span of control. We don't need as many bosses or supervisory roles if we have less police officers. So I come down to percentages, what's the budgeted strength of how many, as we would say, I would call them leadership positions, sergeant, lieutenant, captain, major, lieutenant colonel, and then there's only one of me. So that doesn't change. I want to make sure that those percentages, when it comes to those things, if we attrit down to a percentage where we're supposed to be budget strength, I kind of look at those budget positions. I don't make them fully staffed at those positions because there's less officers to supervise. So I kind of take that formula and that's how I come to a point of where to fill those positions. So we're approximately the same, but I can get you those numbers if we're going to start from sergeant and above, because that's what I call white shirts above leadership positions.
Gotcha. And I know this was just a conversation we've had, and I'm just asking maybe on a timeline. Do you know how close we are maybe of going to transparency, being able to see, I know we made steps with oversight, made steps with technology, as far as what can be shared for policy on the website like St. Louis County has? Are we getting closer to making sure that the department policy is a public document that the people can see?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've already published some policy when it came to technology as with the executive order and as we were putting together the ordinance. My last police department in the state of Delaware, no department, 50 police departments in the state of Delaware, Wilmington included, no one published their policies online. We were the first police department, the mayor and I, and administration, and with council people, not all the people. And we got together, and I saw nothing wrong with it, with certain redactions to make sure that there's certain things you got to protect when it comes to tactics and everything, but minimal. And what we just don't want some people to know some of the things that we're doing, but it's very minimal. And we were able to put that out. It's something that I'd like to do, and we just have to review those policies. And as soon as I can get them out, I'm more than happy. There's nothing other than the process of making sure where we have to redact, having our law department or our attorneys look at it, and our policy people. I have no problem if I got it out yesterday. So I want to get that out as of doing a presentation on the surveillance and the surveillance bill. I'd be more than happy to share that with everyone because there's things that are not going to compromise investigations that we're putting out, and I think the public needs to know that as well.
Last question. And if we are, the follow-up behind that is why I know, we were in a last year, most or the least amount of homicides, super down, I think, to the credit of, Mayor Jones and also the police department. It seems like we probably are trickling up and have more either homicides or crime is higher than it was maybe the last few months than it was last year. Is that true? And if it is, what do you think is adding to that as you're still in the, top head making these like positive change that had an effect on crime being down last year?
Well, listen, we have a long way to go. We've had success. I call it progress. Last year we had 158, but then there was a delayed fatal that made 159. So it still was some of the lowest homicides in 10 years. So everybody talks about violent crime only coming down after the pandemic. And 2020, we saw 263 homicides. Well, this was lower than the years before 2020. This year, we're at 65 versus 63 last year, versus 67 2 years ago versus 3 years ago, 69. So we're right at what we were last year. We did have a spike after having an historic year in January. There was a spike. We had very cold weather, but we had a lot of people known to each other that their conflict resolution skills weren't that great, and they had firearms and they shot each other. We've solved a lot of them. In the month of April, 9 out of the 10 homicides, we actually had an arrest on. So we're not getting there by accident. That's community trust, people volunteering information to us, using technology, great work with the detectives. So to say we're up, I saw something recently in the paper that they went back to January to talk about we're up in violent crime. Yeah, for homicides, we were up. There was a spike in January versus the January the year before. But now you continue on this type of policing and the strategies we have. We're basically even to an historic year. And then we were down 22, 23% in overall Part 1 crimes last year, 2023 versus 2022. As of today, I ran CompStat in the morning before I came over here. Those numbers were down 23% in Part 1 crimes, down in every category with the exception, we're up 2 homicides from last year. We're right there. Every murder matters. We go to vigils for the families that are left behind of homicide victims. That's really important to let them know, first of all, what we could do to prevent it, and second of all, we haven't forgot about them, and if that case is unsolved, we got to continue to work on that. It's a cold case, and I have my homicide lieutenants and people continue keeping in touch with some community members that have lost loved ones, and if they haven't, I make sure that they continue to call them. So the answer is, I watch in the press, they'll go back to some numbers that are negative about us, but they're not telling the real story of what's happening now, and I'm glad you gave me an opportunity to set the record straight of where we are at this time. We're actually down another 20% from last year, and the only category being up is with the homicides, 2 from last year, but that was an historic year. We were down 42 homicides from 200 the year before, 200 the year before, 263 before that, 200. So if we can replicate and come down, we'll be in a really good place. Our goal is no homicides, no shootings, no homicides, no arrests. It's a very lofty goal, but if you don't look to try to get there, you'll never meet it. You might fall short.
That's all I got. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you very much, Alderman.
Oh, I'll take over as chair.
Kara actually delegated that to me.
Oh.
Sorry. Oh, so she's, I was just asking, I was just saying. I think we're done. Alderwoman, you're on mute, Madam Vice Chair.
I'm just talking. I was like, why y'all not listening? I'm talking. Does anybody else have any questions or comments for the chief? Does anybody have any questions or comments for the chief?
I do not.
Questions? Okay. Alderman Aldridge, Alderwoman Saunier.
I don't, and Alderwoman Saunier walked out, so it's just me and Velasquez.
Okay, all right. And so, Chief, I want to thank you for coming before us today. And I think it's real clear that in regards to your budget, it's a lot of questions that we probably need to get answered. And so we'll probably might call you back so we can make sure that we get the right information to help you out with your budget so we can make sure that it's pushed through. So do you all have any questions or comments for us?
Not at all, Vice Chair. Madam Vice Chair, I want to thank you very much for the time, allowing us to explain some of the things and the things that we could not explain. We're going to go back and make sure that we bring it before the chair, get it to the committee, and try to answer as many questions as possible, and to try to clear some of these things up. So thank you for the opportunity and your time to be able to present before the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department. I want to thank my team that's here today as well.
Okay, and I want to, Alderman Oldenburg, are you still on? Because I did not want to forget him. Because I know he was on the video also.
They said he's gone.
Okay, I just wanted to say one last thing, one comment. I understand the situation the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department is in. And so with them having the low number that they do, even though you telling us about the 21 that came back, but I think, and I did send a letter to you in regards to some issues, and morale was one of them in regards to our police officers. And I need people to understand, a lot of time it's not about money. It's about how they feel and how the community, wants them to understand their needs. And so the only way that they can understand is they have to be there to see and breathe with the community, what they're dealing with. And so my soapbox is the area that I cover. I have the 6th district is the largest district, and it has the highest crime rate. So I just want people to understand that, but we also have the lowest numbers. And so they are building up, but it's just gonna take time to rebuild our police department. And so I want people to also know that people were proud to be policemen, because in my old ward, we had a lot of people that lived in our ward that were policemen that actually lived. And so I just want to thank them for the work that they're doing, but understand from the community perspective, we have a lot of more work to do for them to understand what needs to happen to rebuild the communities that we're in. So on that note, did we have any other people that was coming before us? Because I can't see, that's why I'm asking the questions.
I don't think so, Madam Chair.
Okay, all right. So on that note, I'll ask for excuse. Do we have any other people that need to be excused?
I believe everyone was present, Madam Chair.
Okay, all right. So on that note, do we have any announcements?
Well, it's just me here now, and I have no announcement. It's me and you.
It's just me and you
Just
hanging
me and
out,
you.
huh?
Takes two.
I know.
So-
So on that note, I'll ask to adjourn.
I move to adjourn. I'm gonna need you to second because there's.
I'll second. And thank you, Chief, for what you're doing.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair, and I really appreciate those comments. And thank you for the community, and thank you for the officers that are doing that job and the leadership. We wouldn't be able to get it done without their dedication. So thank you very much, ma'am.
All right, thank you all. Have a good day. Okay, now.